Chapter 646. Renshin Hospital. It was 10 o'clock in the morning. This was the appointment time between Ho Chin Yuhan and the doctor. In the waiting room, pregnant women were sitting in twos and threes. Some were chatting, and some were dozing off. Maybe they were sleeping with the little life in their bellies? Ho Chin Yuhan didn't like the smell in the hospital very much. She was anxiously waiting for her number to arrive. At least, she was anxious in her heart. At this time, a pregnant woman next to her suddenly had a pregnancy reaction. She was extremely nauseous. "Are you okay? Do you want me to call the nurse for you?" Ho Chin Yuhan asked with concern. The lady shook her head and frowned. "It's okay. It's probably because the child is too naughty. It has been suffering from bad habits since the morning. I should be able to get a plum. You can try applying some essential balm." Ho Chin Yuhan smiled and said, "Drop a little on a handkerchief or a tissue. You can also cover your nose a little to inhale." The lady's belly was not too big. It was estimated that she had just been pregnant. At this time, when she heard Ho Chin Yuhan say this, she said embarrassedly, "It's my first time being a mother. I don't know a lot of things." Ho Chin Yuhan smiled and said, "It's like this for the first time. You will get used to it slowly." If women started to talk, it seemed that they could talk endlessly. The new mother asked curiously, "By the way, what is your first pregnancy?" "Number 12, it's your turn." The nurse in front of the table shouted the number at this time. Ho Chin Yuhan quickly stood up. "It's my turn. I'm sorry." "It's okay. You can continue with your work." The lady waved her hand. The doctor had many years of experience. She was in her early 50s, and she was a woman. For all the mothers who came here to make an appointment with her, she had a natural sense of security. Ho Chin Yuhan sat quietly in the chair, holding her leather bag with both hands. She looked a little uneasy. When she came in, the doctor who she had seen for some time had no expression on her face. She felt uneasy. "Doctor, what's the result this time?" "Mrs. Zhu, unfortunately, you are not pregnant this time." The doctor shook her head and said, "This cycle is all over. I suggest that you continue to take good care of your body during this time." What else was the doctor saying? Ho Chin Yuhan didn't listen at all, or rather, it was fine even if she didn't stop. She had heard these words many times, and she could even recite them backwards. Ho Chin Yuhan silently took her bag and pushed open the door of the doctor's office. At this moment, the novice mother who had just chatted with her quickly waved at her. Ho Chin Yuhan moved her lips, but she just nodded at the other party. She lowered her head and left from the other side. She had no intention of going over. She hid in the bathroom alone and locked the door. She did not intend to hold it in any longer. She covered her mouth lightly and squatted there. His shoulders trembled slightly as he cried silently. He really wanted to turn back time. 11:15 a.m. "Manager, he's downstairs." "Then let her come up." Zhu Maolin stood up and tidied up the documents on his desk. "Bring her directly to the conference room." He hoped that the one he saw today would meet the requirement. Otherwise, he could only use the finished film. Zhu Maolin came to the conference room alone, and then pulled down the curtains here about half. He received a text message. Zhu Maolin sat down and saw his wife's short message. "Wife, are you busy?" "Zhu Maolin, I'm going to interview a model." "What's the matter?" "Wife, the doctor said that I failed again this time." Zhu Maolin's finger on the phone screen paused for a moment. At this moment, the sound of knocking on the door sounded. He replied, "Let's talk about it when I get back." "Wife, what time are you coming back tonight?" "Manager, this is Xiaolu." Tboy introduced a young long-haired girl who came in. The elements of youth and beauty were fully displayed on this Xiaolu, and she was accompanied by a perfect smile. Zhu Maolin nodded after a brief glance. "Not bad. Sit down and talk. Tboy, ask her some questions first." "I'll take a look first." Xiaolu also sat down a little nervously. Zhu Maolin replied at this time, "She's here. I'll work first. Don't wait for me at night." He didn't wait for his wife's reply, and it seemed that he didn't intend to reply more. He put down the phone and devoted himself to the interview, observing the girl's every reaction and action under Tboy's questions. "Miss Xiaolu, have you used this product before?" It was unknown how many questions Tboy had asked. "To be honest, I haven't used it. Will it affect me?" Xiaolu asked with a little uneasiness. Tboy smiled and said, "It's just some references. You don't have to worry about it." Then, the next question. At this time, Zhu Maolin suddenly interrupted and asked, "If I tell you that the shooting will take place in an hour, and you only have a maximum of 30 minutes to read the script, what will you do?" Immediately? Xiaolu was obviously taken aback by the manager of the advertising company. In the industry, Zhu Maolin was a relatively famous person. It was rumored that this well-known industry insider was a well-known workaholic and efficiency activist. Although she was somewhat mentally prepared before coming, she didn't expect it to be so sudden. "Yes, immediately. You just have to tell me what I will do." Zhu Maolin nodded. The strong professional aura made this young girl, who had yet to graduate from school, feel suffocated. She lowered her head and said, I'll do my best." Hearing such an answer, Tboy couldn't help but shake his head secretly. If Zhu Maolin, as the leader, didn't say that he wanted a cheap and unfamiliar face, it wouldn't be suitable to find such a newcomer at this juncture. But Zhu Maolin's gaze still pressed on the little girl in front of him, and he didn't say a word. Xiaolu's fingers scratched each other under the table, then she stood up with her head lowered. "I'm sorry, I'm bothering you." She had already seen Tboy's disqualified look. "Where are you going?" Zhu Maolin asked abruptly. I'm leaving." "If you leave, who will shoot the film later?" Zhu Maolin said indifferently. "Should I do it? Really?" Xiaolu was shocked. Her eyes widened, looking at the scary manager in disbelief. Zhu Maolin just said indifferently, "Tboy, I'll give you 5 minutes to print the script, and then you have 40 minutes to explain to her. After an hour, let the makeup artist come to the set. Start shooting officially at 2:30 in the afternoon. Hurry up." "Manager, this is mealtime?" Tboy said with a bitter face. "Manager, don't you want to eat?" "On the way." Zhu Maolin said directly. "Bring her a meal too. Remember, we are at war with time. Go." Okay. Watching Tboy take Xiaolu, who had not completely woken up from the selected state, out of the door, Zhu Maolin quickly packed up the things on the table. "I can't stop time. I can't." Outside the floor where the advertising company was located, simply speaking, in the air outside the 19th floor, Taisetsu, who was drinking Master X's iced black tea, floated here. While practicing his flying ability, he watched the performance of the guest here and another guest. That was the fledgling model, Xiaolu. Of course, Xiaolu's original body was number 18, but why was it like this? Let's start from last night. Didn't you say that men just don't want to go home sometimes and just want a little free space? Number 18 said in a voice that made Taisetsu feel very harsh and heart-piercing. The floating black soul messenger duo was outside Zhu Maolin's home. And, even between husband and wife, sometimes quarreling and then having a cold war for a few days is normal. As an experienced person, Taisetsu obviously had a lot of excuses. "Really?" Number 18 sneered. "If it's just a cold war, will his wife prepare breakfast for him every day? Knowing that he will come home late, will she put slippers at the door? Will she tidy up his suit and tie before going out during the day?" Taisetsu sighed. "Well, this couple is indeed a little cold. By the way, didn't you say that you have the ability of the past dream? If I use it, I might be able to find the root cause, right? It's my freedom to use it or not." Number 18 said indifferently, "I naturally have my own way. In addition, since it's teaching, I will teach you how to do the basic guidance method." "How?" Taisetsu asked curiously. Number 18 sneered sinisterly. However, the laughter gradually became peaceful from the gloomy coldness, and finally became pleasant like a silver bell. dressed in a black robe, with a face full of fog, the old witch who was as terrifying as the owner of the candy house in the fairy tale disappeared. Instead, it was replaced by the tall, pure, and lotus-like Xiaolu. Number 18 smiled and said, "Like this. Big sister, isn't this the most unconventional honey trap?" Taisetsu was taken aback. Although he felt that number 18 looked really good like this, he was not necessarily surprised. Back then, when he was still in the club, he fought for territory, fought with enemies, and did everything. Although Taisetsu would not take the initiative to use women, he would not necessarily reject it. "Okay. Are you going to let Zhu Maolin cheat on you?" Number 18 sneered, then she ignored Taisetsu. "I still have things to do. You can go do whatever you want. Tomorrow, I will appear directly in front of the investor like this." After speaking, number 18 turned into a black smoke and left. Taisetsu sighed at this moment and muttered, "This Luochio asked me to follow number 18. Is he messing with me?" Taisetsu shook his head. He glanced at the couple sleeping back to back in the room from the outside. He was about to leave. When he passed by another room next to him, he suddenly stopped and took a look. Empty. This was a room with nothing in it. Xiaolu and Tboy were in the car, busily discussing the shooting. Zhu Maolin also drove his own car and headed towards the shooting location. Taisetsu followed him all the way. He needed to provide number 18 with Zhu Maolin's movements at all times. Ho Qinyuhan had returned to her ceramic art classroom because the students were waiting for her. If there was no class here, she didn't know what to do. All of this disappeared under Luochio's wave of his hand. It was like a layer of illusion spread out in front of Luochio, like a calm water surface. "Number 18, it seems that you are in trouble." The servant girl held a teacup on a plate and sent it to Luochio. "Dream of the past," Boss Luo said indifferently. "If there is no real hatred carrier in the heart, there is no way to touch the other party's thoughts. From this point of view, number 9's ability is more comprehensive." Yu Yi said softly, "But in contrast, you can find something deeper in the mind through the dream of the past. Number 18 and number 9 are different, so the direction of the abilities they choose is naturally different. Why did Master deliberately choose this investor, who is not good at dealing with number 18? Is it really not suitable?" Luochio suddenly asked. "I think number 18 seems to be working hard. She prepared all night last night. She didn't even observe the two quasi-magicians in her game. Because this is the investor that Master approved." She smiled and said, "Number 18 naturally doesn't dare to neglect it." Boss Luo smiled without saying a word, then he remembered something. "By the way, is Xiaolu the original appearance of number 18? Yu Yi nodded. "That's really good." Boss Luo smiled, then stretched and said, "Accompany me out for a walk later." "Supermarket?" Luochio nodded and said, "Yes, today is a discount day. Besides, it's Christmas soon. Don't you plan to decorate our place?" "Then call Taiyinzi and let him take the things." Yu Yi nodded. "That's not necessary." Luochio shook his head. "The Lord God is now preparing for the Christmas Day event in the game world. He is busy enough." "Then please allow Yu Yi to change her clothes." Miss Maid elegantly lifted her skirt. But at this time, the bell in front of the club suddenly rang. A woman with short white hair wearing leather boots and hanging a painting tube on her back walked in directly. As soon as she came in, she said generously, "Boss, first a bottle of beer, then something delicious." With that said, a gray ball of light flew toward Boss Luo, and the white-haired woman continued, "This is the money for the beer, I just killed one on the way." Luochio simply took the ball of light, then waved his hand. Miss May didn't say anything and went to prepare. But before leaving, she took a look at the woman with short white hair, Nero. "Miss Nero, long time no see." Boss Luo waved his hand to pull out the chair next to Nero. But Nero seemed to prefer to sit on the table facing Boss Luo. She chuckled and said, "It seems that you don't like to see me? We welcome guests with open arms." Luocchio shook his head. Nero squinted and said, Really? But why did I feel like I was about to die when your beautiful little maid looked at me just now? That must be your illusion. Chapter 647. Boss Luo was still moved by Nero's boldness. Nero was devouring the food served by Mississippi made at the speed of a whirlwind. The fastest. Although Yu Yi was quite polite and apologetic, she said something like, I'm sorry, Mississippi Nero. Because of the sudden incident, I can only use the leftover ingredients from last night. I hope you don't mind. By the way, the salt in the kitchen is used up. If it's too bland, you can dip it in some soy sauce. What? Is this sour vinegar? I'm sorry. I didn't expect that I would take the wrong one. I'm really sorry. It seems that I'm still not familiar with the Eastern seasoning. I'm really unqualified as a maid. I'll change it for you now, however. The beer was still quite cold. So, I really did offend this maid of yours? Nero, who drank a large glass of beer in one gulp, looked at our boss Luo again with a smile after a satisfied burp. I remember Miss Nero said last time that if you come here again, it will be because you intend to seek refuge. Boss Luo directly skipped a topic that was unnecessary to delve into. And did I say such a thing? Nero blinked and said casually, I don't think so. Luocchio smiled without saying a word. Nero shrugged and took out a box from her body. This was the box given by Boss Luo last time for convenient storage of souls. When the box opened, more than a dozen dazzling light balls rushed out in an instant and floated beside Nero. She suddenly said at this time, Well, in fact, I'm being chased by some guys. If it's convenient, can you heal me a little, and then let me hide for a while? As soon as she finished speaking, a mouthful of blood overflowed from Nero's mouth. She closed her eyes and fell directly on Luocchio. Recently, Boss Luo's reaction was getting better and better. At the moment Nero fell, he dodged. Therefore, the owner of Yama, who used to be one of the immortal generals of Michael Club, directly collapsed on the floor of the club. Looks like his injuries are quite serious. Miss Maid just came out with a plate of food at this time. She looked at Nero, who was lying on the ground, and didn't intend to help him up. She just said indifferently, He has been holding on since the moment he came in. This guest is also a stubborn person. Luocchio intercepted 5 of these floating light balls and returned the rest to their original boxes. Then, he said, Since we've received the transaction fee, let's get to work. With that said, Nero's body floated up. After Boss Luo circled around Nero's body, he stretched out his finger and pointed at Nero's forehead. He tapped it lightly. A ripple-like wave began to ripple from her forehead and spread to her whole body. At the same time, a large amount of green-purple smoke began to emerge from Nero's body. Even in a coma, she showed a painful expression at this moment. Her body was sweating a lot because of bearing this kind of discharge. The moment the green-black smoke was discharged, a huge ferocious wolf head appeared in the air. This wolf head seemed to be unwilling to be destroyed like this. It suddenly roared and crazily bit at Luocchio. Luocchio didn't move. This wolf head's shadow couldn't even get close to him before it was buried in a cluster of black flames. That was Miss Maid's finger. The tail of black flames even remained in the air, like a picture of light and shadow exposed in a camera film. Master, this is like the power of a curse. Well, this energy has a gloomy and cold feeling. That burning black flame finally returned to Yu Ye's palm. Miss Maid's 5 fingers gently extinguished it, and then she said softly, There's the energy of the so-called Eastern monster's so-called monster power. Roughly speaking, the monster that can hurt Miss Nero should be at the level of the Eastern monster, or a high-level monster with special ability. Luocchio nodded and then ordered, You go out and erase the traces of Nero around here. Since the guest asked to hide, let her hide. I see. Miss Maid nodded respectfully. Boss Luo said softly, There's still time at night, let's go buy Christmas decorations. Yu Yi then went out with a smile. In the crevices of the buildings in the corner of the city, Several black shadows were climbing up the walls at an extremely fast speed, all the way to the rooftop of more than 20 floors. These black shadows finally gathered on the roof of the building. Then, at the same time, they knelt on one knee behind a human youth, who had a head of black hair. "Young master, we lost the trace of that woman. She seems to have disappeared suddenly." The young man who was called the young master turned around at this time. He had a typical Oriental face, but he had strange purple pupils. "Batu, even a tracking master like you can't find her? I'm incompetent, please punish me, young master." Batu's head suddenly lowered. The young master shook his head. "Restrain your monster aura first. After all, this is the territory of the Shinryu. Although I can't feel her aura, the aura of the Shinryu still lingers in this city. In addition, there is an unusual monster power." Another subordinate suddenly said, "I heard that the aggressive Sun Shaoxing is also in this city." The young master nodded. "It turns out to be this kind of mysterious monkey monster. I've heard that. This time we chased all the way here just for the stolen secret treasure in the clan. We should try not to provoke Sun Shaoxing. Since the Greedy Wolf clan lost the last Greedy Wolf decades ago, we have to be more cautious." Batu suddenly said at this time, "Young master, what about Master Long Jun?" The young master said indifferently, "With the ability of Lord Long, as long as we appear here, she can naturally sense it immediately. Now she hasn't given me any reaction. Probably she has something to do and left temporarily. But it doesn't matter. Be careful and don't cause chaos in this city. Here is not like the plateau. You should pay more attention. If Lord Long blames us, I will personally ask for punishment." Another subordinate said angrily at this time, "It's really bad luck. Originally, we were going to the Penglai Pact. I didn't expect to encounter such a hateful thief on the way. She used that strange weapon and killed more than a dozen of our brothers. If she died because of your attack, it would be good. If she didn't die, I will definitely catch her alive and bring her back to the clan to light a lantern. Yeah, I don't know if we will miss the Penglai Pact this time because of this." The last subordinate sighed. The young master waved his hand and said, "For thousands of years, the Penglai Pact has long changed. Missing 1 or 2 times doesn't mean that we will miss anything. But the secret treasure of our clan can't be lost. Expand the search area. If she is alive, I want to see her. If she is dead, I want to see her corpse. We must not let the secret treasure of our clan be lost." "Yes, sir." Once again, they turned into black shadows and walked out of this prosperous city in 4 different directions. The young master looked at the city again at this time. There were circles of light patterns in his purple eyes. Strange, why is the aura of this city so abundant? Moreover, in addition to the aura of Lord Long Shinryu and Sun Shaoxing, why is there something else that attracts me? It is so kind, but also... The young master narrowed his eyes. "It makes me uncomfortable." In the open space, a flying football directly hit Zhuifeng's face. Cheese, Nini, and Xiao Jiang quickly came over. "Zhuifeng, what's wrong with you? Why are you in a daze?" Zhuifeng scratched his head in confusion and picked up the football on the ground. "Maybe. I'm hungry?" "Who's hungry? I brought cakes and biscuits." Quietly, a hearty laughter appeared behind these people. Nini heard it and turned around with a smile. "Brother Xiaofei? You're here." Emo Xiaofei handed the biscuit box in his hand to Nini, then sighed. "To be honest, it's okay if I don't know. Once I know your real age and you call me brother, I will be very desperate." Zhuifeng said seriously at this time, "Brother, how many times have I said that if you didn't risk your life to save me that day, I might not be able to hold on? So, you are my brother in this life, Zhuifeng." Okay, let's not talk about this." Emo Xiaofei smiled. "I came to visit you on the way. Next, I will continue to practice with Master. Take care, brother." Zhuifeng put his hands on his waist and sent him off respectfully. Chapter 648. In the quiet lobby of the club, Nero was placed on the sofa by the wall, and the painting tube with Yamato was casually placed on the table next to it. At this time, the painting tube suddenly shook, and a scarlet light shot out. Nero, who was lying on the bed, suddenly sat up. Her eyes were still closed, and the scarlet light fell into her hand. It was Yamato. Even though her eyes were closed, her body instinctively put on a defensive posture. This was completely different from Luocchio's impression of her, as if she was wandering in a sea of bitterness among a pack of wolves. It wasn't until Yamato hummed that Nero slowly opened her eyes. Her battle instincts also faded from her body, and the rare straightforwardness of a woman began to recover. How long have I slept? Nero moved her arms while looking at Luocchio, who was reading a book in front of the bar, and Yu Yi, who was behind the bar. About an hour. Boss Luo smiled and said, "Your physical strength should have recovered. Is there any discomfort in your body?" "Only an hour?" Nero twisted her neck and looked at her body. Finally, she unexpectedly weighed her breasts with her hands and gave Boss Luo a thumbs up, smiling brightly. "Perfect! You are indeed the boss. I've collected 5 souls," Luocchio said indifferently. "That's quite cheap." Nero smiled indifferently. "I was afraid that it was not enough. After all, even if I use Yamato, I can't devour that thing that's wrapped around me. If you delay it for 1 or 2 more days, it may not be enough." "Boss, aren't you going to ask me who injured me and why?" Nero blinked and asked, "Or does the boss already know everything? I don't want to know unless it's necessary. Is this answer okay?" The boss is indeed an energy conservationist. Nero smiled and sat next to Luocchio, but she looked at Yu Yi in high spirit. "Beautiful little sister, can you give me a glass of water? I feel like my body has lost a lot of water. I should have sprayed a lot of water just now, right? Give this Miss Nero a cup of light salt water," Luocchio ordered softly. Didn't he say that there was no more salt? But Nero didn't expose it. After taking a sip to moisten her throat, she suddenly said, "I originally planned to go west and then travel to the plateau. Then, he encountered a group of incredible fellows. He was itching for a fight, so he provoked them. I was planning to show off, but I didn't expect that I would end up being an idiot. Furthermore, I was chased for over 1,000 kilometers. How embarrassing! Miss Nero, the store has already erased the traces nearby. The people who are looking for you will not find this place." Luocchio said indifferently, "Of course, Miss Nero, if you leave the store, or if the other party also comes here as a guest, it will be a different situation. Of course, the charge for erasing the traces has also been calculated." Boss is really as reliable as ever. Nero put her hands together and bowed to Boss Luo. Suddenly, she became pitiful. There is a tough guy in this group. I really can't defeat him. The monsters in this country are really hidden. "So, Miss Nero, are you planning to live here for a long time?" Yu Yi asked suddenly but very softly. "I have this plan." Nero thought seriously. "The remaining weight should be enough for me to pay the rent, right? But if it's like last time, it seems pretty good to let you help to teleport me away. But this time, boss, you can't cheat me of the legendary opening." If Miss Nero can be specific to a precise point, of course, there is no problem. Luocchio smiled. "She is really stubborn," Nero said directly. "Then keep the amount for 1 teleportation, and treat the rest as rent. So, how long can I live here?" Luocchio thought for a while and gave the answer. "In this case, you can live for 10 years. After all, there are so many high-quality souls. Of course, this does not include the protection of Miss Nero's life." Nero blinked and said, "I don't want to stay here for 10 years. How long will it be if the protection of my life is carried out?" "That depends on the degree of protection you want." Nero suddenly said, "Boss, if you protect me 24 hours a day, how long can it be?" "That also depends on the range of activities you expect, Miss Nero. If it is only limited to the scope of this store, it can be up to 10 days. But if it is within the scope of this city, then it is only 20 hours. Luochu paused and then said calmly, "If it is on a global scale, 3 minutes. Sure enough, I can't get any advantage. I was thinking about whether to use the protection time to activate an invincible ability or something, directly attack the headquarters of the club, and kill one of those old guys. But 3 minutes is just the time to say a few words, and boss will only protect me from being hurt, but you won't do anything for me, right?" Nero stretched lazily, then blinked and said, "Then 20 hours it is. However, within these 20 hours, there's another condition, and that's that you're the only one allowed to enter." "As you wish." Something happened that surprised everyone on the set. Although it was only a very short film, not many shots were wasted, or the concept of waste did not exist at all. This new student model named Xiaolu actually completed the shoot in one take. She didn't even stop in the middle. Of course, the script of the small film was originally a solo performance, but it was not easy to shoot all the way to the end, even if it was a professional stage actor. It was like she was born for the stage. If the information didn't say that she was just a college student without much experience, people would really think that Xiaolu was the kind of person who was strictly trained from an early age. This unique shyness of youth, as well as the coquettishness of the camera, seemed to be like the clothing and charm of the heroine who jumped out of the script. They were all perfectly integrated together. "Manager, this Xiaolu can be famous. I dare to guarantee it." Tboy looked at the picture played on the camera in surprise. Zhu Maolin didn't say anything, but he implemented the principle he had always followed. He said directly, "Tboy, you send this film back to the company immediately. It must be edited by 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon at the latest. I will take it directly to the client's company. In addition, since it was completed early, you can leave now." Tboy said excitedly, "Well, manager, does this mean that I can get off work early? As long as the film can be given to me by 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon." Zhu Maolin nodded. "Hooray!" In the parking lot of the shooting site, Zhu Maolin, who had just taken out the car key, subconsciously took out the phone and glanced at it. He was about to click on it. At this moment, Xiaolu trotted all the way, panting slightly. "Manager Zhu. What's the matter?" Zhu Maolin said indifferently, "I should have asked Boy to settle the bill for you on the spot. Haven't you received the reward yet?" No. Xiaolu blinked and said, "It has been given to me, and it's more than I expected. Thank you so much." "It's nothing. You deserve it." Zhu Maolin shook his head. "I was quite surprised that it could be completed in one take, so it saved a lot of time, and the startup fee was also reduced a lot. The extra will be regarded as a reward for you." "Thank you for giving me this opportunity." Xiaolu looked at Zhu Maolin. "It's nothing. You are just suitable for this job." Zhu Maolin shook his head. "Is there anything else? By the way, it's not easy to get a taxi in this place. Where are you going? If it's on the way, I can send you out and then you can leave by yourself." "No need. I can go by myself." Xiaolu's eyes curved like crescent moons as she smiled. "Okay, be careful." Zhu Maolin nodded. "If there is a chance next time, we will cooperate again." "Manager Zhu, wait a minute." Xiaolu suddenly shouted at this time. Zhu Maolin was startled, but he saw the girl stretched out her hands quickly and tidied up the slightly messy tie knot at his collar. Then, "I'm leaving." Xiaolu lowered her head, blushed slightly, turned around and ran away quickly. Zhu Maolin subconsciously touched his tie, looked at Xiaolu's back, and frowned. Chapter 649. This was the earliest day Zhu Maolin had returned recently. The sky had just darkened, and it was not yet 7 o'clock in the evening. There were no slippers placed in front of the house, and there was no food on the table that had long been prepared but was already cold. The only thing that was the same was the quietness in this house. Ho Chunyuhan was not at home. Zhu Maolin didn't even know that she was not at home at this time. Maybe he could confirm it before coming back, but he didn't know why he didn't do so. He tried to pick up his phone several times. He couldn't think of what to say several times. Soon after, Zhu Maolin came out of the kitchen with a bowl of noodles, turned on the TV, and ate while watching. But he didn't know if the noodles tasted good, what was on the TV, and what the lines were. Because it was really quiet here. Zhu Maolin liked a quiet working environment, so his office was also very quiet. However, the two quietness felt very different. Should I continue working in the study room later? Zhu Maolin suddenly had such an idea. But first, he had to finish the noodles. There was only a warm downlight in the living room, which was used to decorate the coolness in the room. Halfway through eating, his wife, Ho Chen-yuhan, opened the door and came in with a bag in her hand. It was the bag from the convenience store supermarket downstairs. The contents of the box should be food. Ho Chen-yuhan probably didn't expect to see the person who had slept with her for many years at this time. She, who was originally expressionless, stood at the door, looking a little overwhelmed. Zhu Maolin looked at his wife and said, "Today's work went well, so I came back early." Ho Chen-yuhan nodded stiffly. Zhu Maolin quickly stood up at this time. His hands gently wiped the clothes around his waist a few times as if he couldn't find the key. Then, he quickly picked up the bowl on the table. But what did he want to do by picking up this? Zhu Maolin couldn't figure out why he did this. He looked at Ho Chen-yuhan, the person who slept beside him, and finally spoke. I only made this because I don't know when you will come back. I will make another one for you." He quickly put down the bowl of noodles as if he found a life-saving reed and found something to do. It's fine. I bought food." Ho Chen-yuhan also said quickly and took out the food box from the bag. As if to prove something, she said, Is that enough for you? I don't eat much. Can I share some with you?" Enough. Zhu Maolin also shook his head quickly. "Actually, I'm almost full. I'm going to the study. There's a plan that I haven't finished yet." Ho Chen-yuhan nodded. "Then I'll eat something first." Zhu Maolin lowered his head and walked quickly into the study. Ho Chen-yuhan quietly sat at the dining table and opened the lunchbox. In fact, she didn't know what it tasted like. Soon after, the sound of music came from the study. Ho Chen-yuhan found her earphones, plugged them into her phone, and plugged them into her ears. The light was still that small, warm downlight. No one had turned on anything else. Gradually, it was late at night. When he looked back, it was already past 1 o'clock in the middle of the night. Zhu Maolin looked at the time, sighed, and turned off the computer. People who were obsessed with work tended to ignore the passage of time. This was the best way for Zhu Maolin to kill time. He also took a shower, returned to the room, and found that his wife, Ho Chen-yuhan, had fallen asleep. He was unwilling to admit that his tense nerves quietly relaxed. He lay down quietly. "The doctor asked me to recuperate before I can do it again. But I think, should I try another hospital?" Light. That was the dim light of the bedside table lamp on Ho Chen-yuhan's bedside table. "Haven't you slept yet?" Zhu Maolin was startled, and then subconsciously said, "You plan to change?" "I don't know. Why don't you try another hospital?" Then, "Good night." "Good night." Ho Chen-yuhan reached out and turned off the light. 2 days had passed. In the evening, Professor Cui Fo once again left the place where Wang Yuechuan lived in the name of relaxation, and then went straight to Lu Zixing's home. The funds that Professor Cui Fo could prepare had all been in place in these 2 days. He didn't do it at all costs, but it was a judgment made after recognizing the extraordinary power in the world. Compared with the magical magic, the Book of the Dead, and the things described in the sole chapter of this book, the wealth in the world had long become worthless for Professor Cui Fo. When Professor Cui Fo arrived, Lu Zixing welcomed him in quite politely. Professor Cui Fo habitually looked at Lu Zixing's mansion. The Lu family started in the jewelry business, so Professor Cui Fo was not surprised to have such a luxurious mansion. It was just that in his impression, most of the rich people in this country seemed to be low-key outside, but they couldn't hide the characteristics that could show their financial resources at home. They seemed to believe in this principle of restrained luxury, but Professor Chui Fo felt that the Lu family's mansion was really empty. For example, at the door, although it was obviously cleaned up, there was still a shallow circular mark left. There should have been something like a vase placed here. Professor Chui Fo even thought that this vase might be valuable. Why? Professor Chui Fo had similar discoveries in many places in the living room. For example, there was a cabbage decoration on the conspicuous cabinet. Professor Chui Fo was very clear that this was not a green jade cabbage carved out of jade, but just a very low-grade and cheap plastic product. Lu Zixing's English was good. It seemed that he was sent abroad to study for several years after high school. Professor Chui Fo, are you alone? Lu Zixing asked Professor Chui Fo to sit down quite enthusiastically, then he turned his head and told his wife, "Go and make some tea." Professor Chui Fo said straightforwardly, "No, I'm not thirsty. In addition, I want to take a look at the goods." Lu Zixing was taken aback, then he smiled very happily. Professor Chui Fo is really a straightforward person. "No problem, come with me. Come this way." Lu Zixing led Professor Chui Fo to the study room upstairs. He asked Professor Chui Fo to stop outside the door, then he closed the door and walked in. In the position of a painting hanging on the wall of the study room, Lu Zixing opened the safe in this house. Now, he could open the safe at will. Because everything here had already become his, and it was completely legal. Thanks to the mysterious merchant, he was able to own everything at such a young age. When the safe was opened, the lighting system in the safe was also activated. Now, in one of the layers of cabinets, there was a delicate box. Inside was the item of this transaction, a black diamond. For some reason, every time he saw this black diamond, Lu Zixing had a sense of fear from the bottom of his heart. In his impression, after his father got this black diamond, his father's temperament seemed to have changed a little. He even subconsciously attributed some of the things he had experienced in this mansion that he didn't want to mention to this black diamond. Lu Zixing even summed it up as an ominous object, even though this thing seemed to attract him every time. However, the disgust suppressed the attraction of the black diamond. So he planned to sell this thing as soon as possible. In fact, it was also a helpless move, because he really owed too many gambling debts outside. Since Lu Ong died and safely and legally inherited the wealth of the Lu family at the cost of family affection, Lu Zixing had a period of time to reflect on the painful experience. But he found that even if he had given up his family affection, nothing seemed to have changed. His wife was still the same as before, and his mother's attitude toward him had not changed. Even he, who had become the only male in the Lu family, had his status in the family suddenly raised to the top. Lu Zixing, who was a little complacent, once again relapsed. He couldn't resist the temptation and went to gamble. It's time to quit gambling. Lu Zixing took the box out of the safe with heavy hands, and then restored everything to its original appearance. Finally, he opened the door and let Professor Chui Fo walk into the study room. "Oh, this is the black diamond?" Professor Chui Fo looked at the box that Lu Zixing opened with both hands. He bent down and almost leaned forward. He even wanted to reach out to take it out and observe it carefully. Unexpectedly, Lu Zixing suddenly closed the box at this time. "Professor Chui Fo, you said that there would be a price that would satisfy me, right? Mr. Lu, please believe that I came with sincerity." Lu Zixing said playfully, "I don't know how much is your so-called sincerity, Professor?" Professor Chui Fo said indifferently, "I don't like your people's way of beating around the bush. I prepared 40 million. Of course, it is in your country's currency. Of course, if you don't want to, you can also exchange it for other countries' money. It doesn't matter." "Only 40 million? Lu Zixing shook his head. "Professor, then I'm sorry. 40 million is too little. Do you know how heavy this black diamond is? When my father bought it back, it was far more than this price. So I'm sorry, I won't sell it to you. Professor Chui Fo said indifferently, Mr. Liu, I think there are some situations that we need to explain to each other. The price was not high. Lu Zixing didn't intend to talk to this foreign old man at all. He shook his head directly. There is nothing to explain. The price you offered is not enough. It's that simple. Professor Chui Fo said calmly, diamonds, especially raw stones, its price is actually not as high as what ordinary people think. The reason why diamonds can be sold at a high price is only because it is given too many invisible things after it is polished. But Mr. Liu, as a jeweler, don't you know the price of diamonds in the diamond market? Yes, this black diamond is very big, a bit bigger than many of the treasured gems in the world. But Mr. Liu, you have to know that the reason why those treasured gems are rare treasures is because history has given them other values. For example, the gem inlaid on the crown given by a king to the empress is because of this legendary component. Then, Mr. Liu, what additional value can your black diamond have? Lu Zixing naturally knew these things. Although he was not a business material, he was also forced to work in the company by his father. He was influenced by what he saw and heard, so he could always know these common sense. Professor Chui Fo, since you can't offer a price that satisfies me, then I don't intend to tell you anything. Lu Zixing still shook his head. Professor Chui Fo smiled slowly. Okay, Mr. Liu, can you issue a certificate for this diamond? If you can, I am willing to add a number that satisfies you. Are you sure? Lu Zixing was a little moved at this time. Of course. How much can you give? How about 5 times? Professor Chui Fo said indifferently. Lu Zixing's heart suddenly jumped. 5 times of 40 million, that is. He looked at the old professor in front of him, and almost wanted to agree directly. Okay, I can give you the certificate in 2 days. Lu Zixing nodded and said, 2 days later, you come to my company with the money, and we will deal face to face. No, Mr. Liu, I think you misunderstood me. Professor Chui Fo said indifferently, I mean, to make a certificate, you and I must be present at the same time, and we need to invite a formal appraiser. How about you and I each find one person? This. Lu Zixing was angry. Professor Chui Fo, what do you mean? Do you think I will fake it? If this is the case, then don't talk about this business. In addition to you, I have more buyers outside who can afford the price. Really? Professor Chui Fo sneered. I'm afraid that's not the case, right? Mr. Liu, I don't think there are many, but except for me, I'm afraid there is no one else, right? Because this black diamond of yours can't provide any proof at all, because it's not a real diamond. What a joke. Lu Zixing snorted coldly. Do you know how much my father spent to buy it? Then how about we go and appraise it now? Professor Chui Fo smiled and said, if it's true, you will be satisfied with the price. If it's not true, then I'm sorry. I won't buy it. Lu Zixing looked at Professor Chui Fo, then looked down at the box on the table. His eyes wandered. What the professor said was true. Because he had already thought about this problem long ago, and he found the company's appraiser to do a test. This was not a diamond, but a crystal. It was another element. The carbon of the diamond couldn't be found at all. The appraiser even said that this thing could be bought from the crystal market for only 100 or so yuan. At least 50 million, no less. Lu Zixing suddenly stared at Professor Chui Fo. Professor Chui Fo shook his head. I'm sorry, Mr. Liu. I don't think you are sincere. I don't think this deal should continue. Then goodbye. I still have an appointment with someone. I have to go. Looking at Professor Chui Fo's determined look to leave, Lu Zixing suddenly became anxious. Wait a minute, 40 million. Professor, save the number you said at the beginning. This black diamond is yours if you buy it. Chapter 650. How much gambling debt did Lu Zixing owe? Regarding this question, Perhaps even he himself didn't dare to think too much about it. He clearly knew that this kind of casino was a pit, but he was definitely not the only one who would jump into it. There were also many people who were far richer than him, and at the same time, had far more debts than him. It was just that now, the huge debt he signed made him unable to repay it, and these were hidden from his mother and wife. Even if he invited Professor Chui Fo to come tonight, he only told his wife that he was an ordinary business friend. He didn't disclose the matter of buying and selling this black diamond. No, it was the matter of this black crystal. As this foreigner said, this black diamond was not similar to a real diamond at all. There was no way to produce a certificate that could make people trust it, so there was no buyer at all. If he agreed directly from the beginning, it would be 40 million. Lu Zixing was extremely regretful at this moment. 38 million. It can't be lower. 35 million. Reduce it by another 2 million. 30 million. 28 million. Lu Zixing finally gritted his teeth. 20 million. If you don't want it, I'll cut it into pieces. I won't sell it to you. What an idiot. Professor Chui Fo sneered in his heart. He slowly turned around and said calmly, 10 million. I'm not as interested in it now. Only 1,000. Lu Zixing almost roared, you're going too far. He even spoke his native language. Obviously, Professor Chui Fo couldn't understand it at all. Mr. Lu, you have to know that only I am interested in this thing. With that said, Professor Chui Fo took out the checkbook, quickly wrote a number, tore it open, and held it between his fingers. If the deal is made, you can immediately check the authenticity of the money. Lu Zixing gritted his teeth. The thing that only gamblers had was completely exposed. That was to gamble. How would he know whether he would lose or win if he didn't gamble? I'll tell you, Lu Zixing said in a deep voice. I won't sell it if the price is too low. Professor Chui Fo, I'll tell you honestly now that this thing is not a diamond at all. It may just be an ordinary crystal, or it may not even be a cheap crystal. But you want it, right? Professor Chui Fo's eyes narrowed slightly. If you don't want it, you won't come to me at all. Lu Zixing sneered, yes. I've looked for many sellers, but no one was willing to buy it. But that doesn't include you. That doesn't include you. In other words, apart from you. Therefore, the right to speak is with me. Now listen to the cards, Professor. My cards are obviously bigger than yours. I like your temperament now, Mr. Lu. Professor Chui Fo smiled slightly. What do you want now? 30 million. Lu Zixing said calmly. Let's not talk nonsense. I believe you came here to bargain with me. Therefore, 30 million is the lowest price I can accept. If you want it, then take it. If you don't want it, then leave. Professor Chui Fu said indifferently, Mr. Lu, apart from me, I'm afraid you can't even earn 100 yuan for this thing, right? Lu Zixing suddenly smiled and said, Professor, similarly, apart from me, you can't find this thing anywhere else. You are still willing to talk to me, which means that you must be interested in this thing. So, is there any need for us to continue bargaining like this? Oh dear Mr. Lu. Professor Chui Fo nodded. I think you can become a very good businessman, but why do you encounter such difficulties now? Maybe you're just unlucky. I just can't control my desire to gamble. Lu Zixing sighed in his heart. Okay then, 30 million. Professor Chui Fo nodded, then he wrote a new check. Although he didn't have much opinion on this money now, if he could lower the price, it was in line with human nature. This was not the professor's own country. Except for buying this thing from Lu Zixing with money, he had no other better and faster way to not get into trouble. After Lu Zixing verified the authenticity of the check, he finally handed this ominous black diamond to Professor Chui Fo. 40 million. It should be almost enough to pay off his current debts and make up for some of the funds he embezzled from the company. Lu Zixing personally sent the professor out of the door. Only after watching him leave did he breathe a sigh of relief. He returned to the living room. At this time, his mother, Lu Shi, and his wife were sitting here. There was no expression on their faces. Lu Zixing instinctively felt that something was wrong. He asked, "What's wrong? Why aren't you talking?" At this time, his wife glanced at it and suddenly sighed. She took out something from the briefcase next to the sofa and put it on the table. She pointed and said, "Lu Zixing, sign this." Lu Zixing frowned, picked up the document, and looked at it casually. After seeing the contents of the first page, Lu Zixing's face changed dramatically. He quickly flipped through the document in his hand until the last page, then he suddenly said angrily, "What is this? Are you crazy? You actually want me to sign this thing?" This was a document, asking him to resign from the company automatically. Lu Zixing's wife said indifferently at this time, "The conditions are already very good. As for the compensation after your resignation, it is almost enough for you to live for a while. I hope you can sign it. After all, we don't want to have too much trouble." "What medicine did you take today?" Lu Zixing looked at his wife incredulously. Lu Shi said in a deep voice at this time, "She didn't take the wrong medicine. This is what I mean. Lu Zixing, if you sign this thing, it will be good for you. If you don't sign it, then don't blame us. You have embezzled so much of the company's money. Once these things are investigated, you know the consequences." "Mom, how can you talk like this?" Lu Zixing suddenly felt cold. This was his mother, the mother who doted on him, but now she was like a stranger. The sense of isolation that far exceeded the feeling of alienation made him instinctively feel frightened. "I'm not your mother," Lu Shi said coldly. "I don't have a prodigal son like you. Lu Zixing, if you still have a little self-awareness, sign this termination contract, take the compensation and get out of here. If you are not smart, then don't blame me for using the power of the board of directors to force you out." "Board of directors?" Lu Zixing was taken aback and subconsciously said, "Mom, wife, today is not April Fool's Day. What are you doing? Board of directors? Isn't this funny? The biggest shareholder of the company was originally me. After I took over my father's shares, who can force me out of my position as the chairman?" "You are no longer the chairman of the company," Lu Shi said indifferently. "You don't have any company shares at all. Since you took over the company, you still don't know, right? You've already signed a few share transfer agreement." "Impossible. When did I sign this kind of thing?" Lu Zixing shook his head. "Of course, you don't have an impression," Lu Shi said. "How can you have an impression? Didn't you lose money in gambling at that time and come back drunk? You were in a daze. What do you think you have an impression of?" Lu Zixing became more and more frightened. His wife did ask him to sign something several times when he went home at night. Could all this be true? "I know you won't believe it. These are copies of the transfer documents. Take a look at them yourself." His wife shook her head. She didn't have a cold expression like Lu Shi, but she also took out a stack of documents. Lu Zixing took it with trembling hands and looked at it one by one. But he didn't finish reading it completely. His palms and forehead were already sweating. His signature one by one awakened the memory of when he was coaxed to sign it again and again. "You actually did this to me. Why?" "You said why?" Lu Shi stood up with a stern face. "Think about what you have done. You gamble every day. Even if you go to work, it is an online casino. Tell me yourself, how much money have you embezzled from the company? Have you ever managed the company's affairs? If it weren't for a few old officials in the company who have been doing things, the company would have been gone long ago. Let me ask you, can you tell the company's financial situation last month? How much is the profit? You can't tell me, right? Let me tell you, there is no profit at all. I can't let all the things your father left behind be lost in your hands." Lu Zixing blushed when he was questioned. "Mom, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry, I know I'm wrong. Mom, can you forgive me once, for the last time? I promise to change, I will change. Please, I'm your son. You can't do this to me. Wife, you talk too. From now on, there is no you in this family. Lu Sure looked at Lu Zixing as if she was looking at a stranger. You sign. This is because your surname is also Lu. But whether you sign it or not, it's up to you. I don't even want to see you now. I'll give you half an hour. You pack up and get out of this room immediately. How could this be? I'm obviously your son. Don't you care about family affection? But family affection, the air around him seemed to have become cold. Lu Zixing slumped on the ground weakly. He had already used up family affection. He had no family affection. Just like when he killed Luong with his own hands. He didn't feel any pain afterwards. But now, he was expelled from the family and everything was taken away. His mother just looked at him like a stranger. Chapter 651. The Eighth House. This was what she had been told by the people who had brought her to this place. They were all wearing white uniforms and were carrying powerful weapons of mass destruction. And she was just a 5 or 6-year-old child who needed to raise her head to see the chins of these people in white uniforms. A little girl who was wearing the clothes prepared by these people and had already cleaned them. She met a lot of people on the way here, who were all wearing white uniforms. She couldn't tell what these people were doing, because for her, everything here was beyond her understanding. Yes, since the tragic death of her parents, this world had been beyond her understanding. The little girl looked at the clothes on her body. It was just a piece of clothing that was directly worn on her body. There was no upper or lower part, not even a bag. It was just like a robe that covered her body. A brooch-like thing was pinned on her chest, with a line of numbers written on it. Her mother had taught her numbers when she was still alive, so she recognized the number written on it, 1031. Go in. From now on, you will live here. As long as you obey the rules, you can survive. As long as you become strong, you can stand out. This is the only advice for you. Welcome to the Eighth House. They opened a door in front of her and pushed her directly into this place. After that, the door closed automatically. She was a little scared and leaned against the door of the closed room, looking at everything in front of her. There were many people wearing the same clothes as her. From those who were about her age to those who were about 11 or 12 years old, she found that there were so many children here that she couldn't count them all at once. But these children seemed to be unwilling to get close to her. Even though she had been in this room for several minutes, they just looked at her silently. As a newcomer here, she tried to get in touch with these children who came here earlier than her. Don't come near me. Go away. She had failed many times. Finally, she understood that the people here didn't like others to get close to them. Even if they were in the same room, they all kept a certain distance, as if each territory was marked. Come here. She heard such a voice. It was another girl who was a little older than her, about 10 years old. The girl was also wearing a badge with the words, 791. And the children next to her suddenly looked at her strangely. She looked at these eyes and suddenly remembered those evil dogs who looked at her with hostility. She finally walked to the 10-year-old girl who called her, feeling uneasy. Don't mind them. They are not targeting you, but everyone here. The 10-year-old girl said, the first sentence. Why? She was quite puzzled. The 10-year-old girl smiled and said, because there are no friends here, and no one wants to share and play with you. Of course, that includes me. I don't understand. She shook her head. You will understand in the future. That was what the other party had told her. It was a kind of intimate and irresistible feeling. As for why I'm calling you? That's because I'm smarter than all of them. Listen well, from now on, you and I are collaborators. Do you understand, 1031? 1031. Yes, your name is 1031. The 10-year-old girl pointed at her badge at the same time. As for me, it is 791. So she shook her head. I am not 1031, my name is Choi Yunair. This is the name my mother gave me. Really? 791 shrugged and said, then forget this name. Anyway, in this place, you can only be 1031. I can tell you in advance, if you don't respond when those people outside call you 1031, you will suffer a lot. Do you understand? 1031, my name is Choi Yunair. This is the name my mother gave me. I am not 1031. She said loudly, tears in her eyes. Do as you wish. 791 said indifferently, in that case we won't be partners anymore. Our relationship will only continue when you understand it. Later, she encountered the so-called suffering mentioned by 791. That was the second day she came to the 8th house. She was locked in a small, pitch-black room. She didn't know whether it was day or night. No matter how much she cried, she didn't get any response. She wasn't given anything to eat or drink. She was only released when she was on the verge of death. Do you understand now? 791 came to her again. So, now tell me, what is your name? She shrank her body, even lowered her head, and said in a frightened voice, 1031. It's funny, then in the next second she was shocked, lowered her head and covered her lips with her lips. She bit her lips and bled at the same time. What are you doing? She was frightened again. 791 smiled and said, contract, from now on we are partners. 1031, kill all the people here with me. Kill all. When she woke up, it was already morning. On the unusually soft hotel bed, Nero sat up. The quilt slid down from her body, revealing the shocking scars on her body. She reached out and touched her lips. Then, she smiled and stretched her body. She sighed and said, who's having such a good time? Sure enough, it's different to have someone to protect me. Right, boss? Nero tilted her head and looked at the club boss sitting on the sofa in the corner of the hotel suite with his eyes closed. Hearing the sound, Luaccio opened his eyes. He found that the guest didn't intend to hide at all. At this time, she was sitting on the big bed with one hand holding her chin, looking over and scrupulously. Luaccio smiled and said, it seems that Miss Nero has a good sleep. Of course. Nero nodded. Because of a reliable boss like you, of course I can sleep very well. I even had a good dream. Thank you very much. You're welcome. Luaccio said indifferently. In addition, there are still 7 hours left of the guest's protection time. Nero used 13 hours of the 20 hours of protection to sleep, and she even slept naked. This sleep is really luxurious. Nero stretched again, then walked down from the bed with the thin quilt. She walked to Boss Luo, tilted her head and looked at him. Boss, am I not attractive at all? Miss Nero's figure is very good. Boss Luo nodded and said, very healthy. Legs, do you like them? Nero suddenly lifted her foot, then gently stepped on Luaccio's side, and slowly lifted the quilt on her legs. Unlike the skin left by many scars on the upper body, the skin on her thighs showed a very healthy and smooth color. When the quilt was lifted to a certain extent, even the green blood veins under the almost jade-white skin could be seen. Do you want to see more? Nero narrowed her eyes. You can treat it as a thank-you gift for working hard all night, boss. 3 minutes. Luaccio said suddenly. What? Luaccio said again. The time before the end of the protection time has been shortened by 3 minutes, my guest. It's really difficult. Nero sighed and shook her head. I am actually quite confident about my body. But now it looks like... Nero turned around, then looked sideways at her shoulder. The cobweb-like scars on her back were very eye-catching, more or less. It still feels very ugly, right? Miss Nero, if you don't like it, I suggest you buy the service of this small shop. Boss Luo said indifferently. It is not expensive to remove these scars. Boss, this script is wrong, right? Nero said with a smile. The atmosphere was so good just now. Maybe if you say something cool, I might be conquered? There is no discount like this, guest. Luaccio said indifferently. The black card is already your discount voucher. I think I still hate businessmen. Nero shook her head and put down the quilt on her body. She was only wearing a pair of underwear, as if she was not there at all. She greeted, "I'll take a shower first. Can you help me call for breakfast service?" "Of course." Lucio smiled. "I wish you a pleasant bath. You can come in and see at any time." Nero shrugged. "I'm not closing the door." The hot water flowed all the way down from above. Nero closed her eyes. After a long time, she turned off the nozzle and watched the water dripping from her wet hair. "Sure enough, if I completely relax, I will still dream." She shook her head, brushed her hair behind her head, and then wrote a few numbers on the fog-covered mirror with her finger. 10:31. She wiped it with her palm again, shrugged, then took a towel and hung it around her neck, and walked out of the bathroom directly. "Boss, is breakfast here? I'm hungry." "So are you really not going to wear clothes?" Chapter 652. Short brown boots, tight jeans, a coat of the same color as the boots, and a hat and scarf. She didn't bring the picture tube that always hung on her body. After changing into clothes suitable for winter, Nero, who was walking slowly in front of Boss Luo, was probably just a girl with white hair in the city, who looked relatively different. No one could associate more with her past, present, and future. Walking in the bustling city, Lucio found that Nero had a different kind of joy from the past. In front of the cabinet of a cake shop on the street, she pressed her hands on the window glass of the shop, almost sticking her face to the glass. She was staring at a matcha cake that had just been put on the counter. "Do you want to eat it?" Lucio asked curiously. He had eaten the hotel suite's breakfast about half an hour ago, and the amount was particularly large. Nero nodded and followed her body's instinct. She clapped her hands and begged, "Boss, treat me to one, I don't have money." This poor and magnanimous smile made Lucio walk into the cake shop helplessly, and then come out with the packed matcha cake. "Thank you, boss." Nero ate the cake as she walked with a happy face. She was like a little girl enjoying the winter sunshine. If danger suddenly appeared at this time, would she still be able to maintain this kind of poor and magnanimous smile, as if to tell the world what kind of person she was? It stands to reason that Miss Nero shouldn't encounter financial difficulties. Nero took it for granted. This situation didn't happen before. As for the clubs, they basically had their own secret places all over the world. There were quite a few in this country. After all, among the 26 people who have the right to speak in the club, it seems that several of them are from this country. But as you said, as a member of the Divine Generals, how can they lack pocket money when they are walking outside? I'm talking about the Divine Generals. Boss, do you understand? She faked her death in the battle with Cuck. Now she was temporarily marked as dead on the list of the Michael Club. Naturally, Nero couldn't continue to enjoy her benefits as a Divine General unscrupulously as before. Lucio watched Nero eat a piece of matcha cake happily with some cake residue left beside her lips. He took out a handkerchief and gave it to her. "Thank you." Nero was not pretentious. She took it and wiped her lips a few times. "Do you want to eat more?" Lucio asked with a smile. "If you can, please give me another one." Boss Luo nodded. This was the time that Nero bought. She didn't seem to care about using this way. Hence, another matcha cake was placed in front of her as she was a girl. Looking at Nero's happy expression, Lucio finally found a connection between the current Nero and the Nero he had met in the past. "Is food important to you?" "Yes." Nero stopped and held the remaining half of the cake with both hands. She suddenly whispered, "If there is anything in the world that will never betray you, it must be food. If there's anything in this world that would unconditionally serve you, it would definitely be food. Before humans enjoy life, emotions, and even show hatred, sadness, and so on, before all biological signs, isn't it all because they have food?" She looked at Boss Luo. "Since it is such an important food, of course I eat it with gratitude." Lucio smiled. "Is it delicious?" Nero said softly, "As long as it can fill people's stomachs, it is delicious." Although this was the case, she was not in the state of enjoying delicious food. Whether it was a small piece of cake or a big meal, Nero ate them almost to the extent of swallowing. It seemed that the time to enjoy food was the real luxury for her. Therefore, after she swallowed the second piece of cake, it was obvious that she had swallowed it. Boss Luo stretched out his hand at this time. A bottle of mineral water in the refrigerator of a convenience store across the road disappeared and then fell into his hand. At the same time, 3 yuan appeared on the cashier of the convenience store inexplicably. Wow! I'm saved. I almost became the first divine general of the club to choke to death. Of course, this was just a joke. Nero wiped the water stains on her lips with her sleeve. She looked at Luochio and blinked. Boss, how much time is left? A little more than 5 hours and 17 minutes. 5 hours. Nero suddenly stood up and stretched out her hands to pull up Luochio. She said excitedly, in this case, don't waste time. Boss, do you want to have a round with me? She shouted excitedly. Her eyes were shining with fanaticism, and her face was flushed because of excitement. Nero clamped her legs even more tightly at this time. Go, 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 go. Yes. That's it. Boss, you're great. Harder. Put more strength into it. I'm almost there. It's almost out. Ah. So the big gun that released extremely hot things was lifted up. As the victory screen of this arcade mecha game, it appeared in front of Luochio and Nero. Compared with the huge game machine on the same stage, the opponent's unwilling voice came, "You on the other side, let's have another round." "I'm not afraid of you." Nero stood up directly, stretched out her fingers and pulled down her eyelids. She made a face at the opponent and stuck out her tongue. The 2 people on the other side were about 30 years old. Perhaps they had already cultivated their minds, but they unexpectedly gritted their teeth in anger, because this was a rather old arcade game. And this was also a game parlor that had the memories of a generation and had been eliminated by the times. In this game parlor, Luochio once witnessed the birth of a soul. And now, without a doubt, he was immersed in the declining atmosphere of this game parlor. Here, it was unusually cold. On the opposite side of the arcade were 2 people who came to reminisce about their childhood. Perhaps their skills in those days were very good, right? Luochio held the pink joystick. The game was personally taught by Nero. I didn't expect Miss Nero to be so familiar with the products of this era. Nero rolled her eyes and said, "It's just you guys here, okay? In many places outside, this kind of game parlor is still very popular." "Wow. Boss, take it easy, you are too forward, be careful of landmines." It was the first time for Luochio to sit in this kind of place and play such a game. It was a novelty. Time was passing by little, and the combination of Nero and Luochio defeated the 2 uncles on the opposite side again and again. "No way. We can't win at all. You guys are so powerful." The 2 uncles finally surrendered helplessly. One of them even bought some drinks from the counter of the game parlor and gave them to Nero and Luochio. Boss Lua looked at the can of Coke in front of him with some surprise, but Nero had already drunk it without hesitation. "Sure enough, it's the best to drink Coke after exercising." "And right." The uncle laughed. Looking at Nero and the 2 uncles drinking Coke like friends who met at a snack stall on the roadside, Boss Luo finally reached out to accept this kindness. Time was running out here again. But Nero still continued to sit in front of the machine excitedly, and at this time, the 2 uncles had already left together. Perhaps they had been good friends since childhood, or perhaps they had met here before, which led to today's fate. Luochio leaned against the machine. "The game coins are running out, do you want to continue?" Chapter 653. It had been almost a day since the target had suddenly disappeared, and no traces of him could be found. The young master was currently in a luxurious hotel suite. The curtains were open, allowing the young master to take in about a quarter of the city's sights. The subordinates sent out hadn't come back yet. They wouldn't come back until there was news. That day, when he encountered that strange white-haired human woman, after a fierce battle, This young master used the power of the greedy wolf in the end to gain the upper hand. Of course, if it weren't for the dozens of subordinates around him who sacrificed themselves to hold the opponent back, the outcome would have been different. It's not Kelowna's Taoist magic arts. Which side does it belong to? Compared to this, I'm more concerned about something in this city. Another voice different from the young master's sounded in the room, greedy wolf like a shadow attached to the young master. At this time, a dark thing gushed out from behind the young master. It was like half a werewolf, but only its scarlet eyes could be seen. This werewolf-like shadow was much bigger than the young master. The young master frowned. You mean Kelowna Shinryu? No, our clan has no enmity with Shinryu. I mean, Greedy Wolf Star. The werewolf shadow said indifferently, haven't you felt it? Is that the trembling feeling in your blood? Although it's very weak, I'm sure that the real Greedy Wolf Star of the Greedy Wolf clan must be nearby. The young master's gaze was a little complicated, and he murmured, the real Greedy Wolf Star. The Greedy Wolf suddenly laughed strangely. Are you afraid? The Greedy Wolf was born for the Greedy Wolf. Once the current Greedy Wolf Star chooses to devour the Greedy Wolf. Greedy Wolf, you talk too much. The young master said indifferently, since this is my destiny, I will accept it calmly. As long as the Greedy Wolf Star can return to our clan, even if I... The door of the hotel suite suddenly opened at this moment, and a man with thick eyebrows and big eyes wearing strange clothes walked in quickly. Before this, the Greedy Wolf on the young master had returned. Young master, we've tracked the white-haired woman. Let's go. The young master's purple pupils flashed with a trace of fierceness. He waved his sleeves and turned around to walk out of the hotel suite. The clan's secret treasure must be taken back. It seemed that the protection time that Nero bought was just to be able to wander around this city. He didn't do anything particularly shocking. She was like an ordinary woman living in the city, sitting on those familiar things to pass the time. After coming out of the game hall, Nero spent 2 hours shopping in a shopping mall. She only looked but didn't sell. Luocio asked her curiously why she didn't buy it. She simply replied, because I can't. She then pointed at her forehead and smiled, but if it's here, I can take it away. With less than 3 minutes left, the two came to a riverside park built by the river. At this time, Nero bought 2 ice creams from the ice cream house in the park. Nero was looking at the 2 ice creams as if it was difficult to choose. It doesn't matter if I don't eat it, Boss Luo said indifferently. Nero gave out the one in her left hand and said seriously, Boss, this one is smaller. It's yours. Nero didn't lick it with her tongue. She just put the ice cream ball in front of her lips. She probably used a kind of sucking method. The eating speed was still so fast. It was just that there was an essential difference between these cold things and hot food. Wow, it's so cold. Nero patted her forehead. Boss, don't you like the taste? Why did you only eat a little? If you don't eat it quickly, it will all melt. Luocio said at this time, Miss Nero, it's time. Walk with me for a while. Nero walked in front. I don't need to protect you. I just want to walk through this place. It shouldn't take much of your time, right? After all, I'm also a regular customer. Don't tell me you don't have a gift? Of course not. Luocio followed with a smile. The two walked leisurely and slowly in the green passage near the river. Nero suddenly asked, Boss, when did you become the boss? Well, don't say it first. Let me guess. Before I came out, I got some information from the clubhouse. There are rumors that your shop is older than the few old immortals in the clubhouse. Then, 500 years ago? Luocio shook his head. 600 years? The boss still shook his head. Could it be 1,000 years ago? Nero looked at Luocio strangely. It turns out that you are the real old immortal? Nero's question was about some secrets of the shop. If he really wanted to be honest, it would also reveal the 2 different bosses. Luocio didn't intend to reveal it. At least, before Nero was willing to buy it. Forget it. It's impossible to guess it. Nero shook her head, then turned to look at the place where the river flowed. Boss, you said that after obtaining extraordinary power, did your view of the world change? I don't doubt the ability of your shop to buy. As long as the customer can afford the price, you can do anything. In other words, boss, you can do anything, at least I think so. She stepped on the stone pier of the railing by the river as if she wanted to see farther. How would you feel then? Why do you ask this? Luocchio asked curiously. I'm just curious. Nero said indifferently. I also have extraordinary power. I thought this world was just like this. Since I got Yamato, things have become very boring. It is already such a boring world for me. Then, for you, boss, how unbearable is this boredom? So you like pranks more? Luocchio asked instead of answering. Apart from that, there are other reasons. Do you know why? Nero suddenly turned around. Standing on the stone pier, she bent down slightly and looked down with her hands behind her back. If you want to know, I can tell you, but what do you use to buy my answer? Luocchio said softly, Miss Nero, don't you hate businessmen? That's why it's necessary to bargain. Nero narrowed her eyes. The divine general with Yamato, whom Luocchio was familiar with, returned. At this moment, she was no longer the ordinary girl walking in the city, but she who had extraordinary power. Nero stretched out her palm, and Yamato, which was integrated with her body, slowly emerged from her palm at this time. She rotated her shoulders and then stretched. Well, I've rested enough and eaten enough. Then I'm ready to do something big, boss. Do you want to watch the battle? Luocchio looked in a certain direction. In the language of the monster clan, there were several strong monster auras rapidly approaching. He looked at Nero and asked, Do you need help? Nero shrugged and said, I don't have anything to pay now. Boss, are you a profiteer? Do you want me to sell myself to you so much? Then I'll watch the battle. Luocchio smiled slightly. Nero jumped down from the stone pier and walked past Boss Luo. When she was about to pass by, she suddenly stopped. Luocchio showed a puzzled expression. Nero showed a wicked smile, reaching out to grab the unfinished ice cream in Boss Luo's hand and swallowed it directly. She ate too fast. So she patted her forehead again and walked forward, then looked back and said, Sure enough, it's better for me to finish it by myself. In fact, I don't want to share it at all. She jumped and the sky was already far away. Luocchio found a bench in the park and sat down. There was no one nearby, so he just watched the battle here. Chapter 654. Nero carried Yamato on her shoulder with a smile on her face. She finally stopped on an uninhabited riverbank in the riverside park. Traces of activity could be seen here. Perhaps during the last holiday, many people had come here for a holiday. She picked up the drink bottle buried in the sand, and then threw it back. The drink bottle that had become trash accurately fell into the garbage basket in the distance. At the same time, there was a voice in the distance. I really didn't expect that a thief like you would actually have a time when you're concerned about public morals. Nero turned around and looked at the guy who chased after her after she took away the thing. They all seemed to call this guy Young Master. The young master walked out calmly with his hands behind his back. Behind him were 4 men in strange clothes. He looked like a prince who was traveling in a foreign country. Yeah, I'm really a very civic-minded person. Nero shrugged and said, I'll dump you guys in later, and it'll be almost done. A burly man behind the young master rubbed his fists and grinned. You shameless thief, you stole our things, and now you dare to insult our young master to his face. Nero yawned and said, Okay, uncle, I remember you. Last time you were the first one who was beaten by me. Don't come out and embarrass yourself. What's the matter? Is it still the same old rules? Are you going to gang up on me? If it weren't for your plot last time, how could I? The burly man's face was filled with rage. He bared his teeth, which were like steel teeth used to pounce on beasts. His entire body even began to grow fine, black, and shiny hair. The man grinned. You were hit by the power of our young master's greedy wolf. Now you can still talk big. Wait, I'll treat you well. Lang Sha, step back. The young master stretched out his hand to stop Lang Sha, causing the furious Lang Sha to let out an unwilling roar. It was very clear that Lang Sha instantly began to restrain his violent emotions. Although his gaze was still terrifying, he still obediently retreated. Nero said with disappointment, "Ah? You don't want to fight? If you're not going to fight, I'm leaving." "I'm very curious." At this time, the young master said indifferently, "You were missing for almost a day, and then the wounds on your body healed. Did you use some method or did someone save you?" "Her injuries have healed?" Lang Sha, who was behind the young master, was stunned. The companions beside Lang Sha also frowned, because they all knew that if this woman had a way to heal herself, she wouldn't have had to run away so pathetically. But to heal the erosion of the greedy wolf's power in less than a day was too inconceivable. Unless it was someone who was far more powerful than the young master, and in this city, there was probably only that Lord Long Jun. The power of the greedy wolf was also a unique mark of their race, so it was impossible for that lord to not know about it. But if that lord knew about it and still saved them, then the relationship between the woman who stole the secret treasure and Lord Long was worth thinking about. Of course, it was also possible that there were other circumstances that allowed the injuries caused by the power of the greedy wolf to disappear. However, compared to this extremely unlikely scenario, they were more inclined towards the former possibility. No wonder young master stopped Lang Sha's action from the beginning. It seemed that he had thought of this long ago. Ahead. Looking at this group of monsters who suddenly seemed to be disconnected, Nero couldn't help but whisper, "These guys, did they think wrongly?" She shook her head and looked at the young master, who was really handsome from a human's point of view. At first, she even thought that this young master was a woman, but she was wearing men's clothes. Who knew that after a fight, it was really King Man? "I don't seem to have the obligation to tell you how my injuries are healed, right?" The young master said calmly, "Anyway, you took away my things, so you have to return them. In addition, you also killed more than a dozen of my entourage. They are all carefully trained warriors, so this account has to be settled." "Just right." Nero showed a poor smile. "My pocket money has been used up, so I will use you guys to make up for it. This time, I won't be so easily defeated by your strange power." Nero's body appeared in front of the young master at an extremely fast speed. The speed of her body even surpassed the speed of sound. The Yamato in her hand was even more merciless as it slashed toward the young master's body. "I touched it." The Yamato cut through the young master's clothes and even made a small wound on the young master's arm. It didn't hit the vital part, but the young master dodged it. The few macho men behind the young master no longer held back at this time. They were furious. Their solid muscles burst out of their clothes, and they completely turned into the appearance of a wolf's head and a human's body. They flew toward Nero from 4 directions. They were all outstanding high-level monsters. They were ruthless and had survived in the harsh environment of the plateau since they were young. They didn't care about their lives when they fought. Nero didn't seem to be at a disadvantage, even with 4 against 1. Instead, she easily suppressed these 4 wolf warriors. This woman is very good at scuffles. Looking at this way of fighting, she should be in an environment of killing each other for a long time. Although she looks like she is playing, there is no flaw at all. She is always on high alert. I don't know who used what kind of harsh and cruel environment to cultivate such a monster. The voice of Greedy Wolf sounded from the bottom of the young master's heart. In addition, the strange weapon in her hand is really strange. It can easily tear my defense and cause damage to you. Try to be careful. As the vessel of Greedy Wolf, you are not good at close combat. The young master glanced at the wound on his arm. If the other party is a monster cultivated in such a way, didn't I inherit Greedy Wolf by using the method of killing hundreds of voodoo and leaving only 1 voodoo? In that case, I'm also a monster. I understand. The young master nodded. Cross-like cracks began to float in the purple pupils. I don't have a very good close combat ability, but the power of Greedy Wolf is the best spell attack. The strange purple energy began to quietly seep into the river bank. When the range of dozens of meters fell into the range of Greedy Wolf's power, Nero suddenly felt that her body became abnormally heavy. Her whole body seemed to have fallen into a swamp, and the speed of swinging the sword suddenly decreased a lot. At the same time, Lang Sha's heavy punch hit her back without hesitation. This punch was obviously much heavier than the previous one. It seemed that the power suddenly increased. The four wolf warriors were still blocking Nero's four corners. Because of the special situation her body endured, she couldn't react in time and was attacked by Lang Sha's punch. Blood also flowed out from the corner of Nero's mouth. Although she didn't know what the demonic power of these monsters could do, at least she could feel that the surroundings were full of this strange power. Nero narrowed her eyes at this time. You set a trap for me, and now you put buffs on your teammates. It's quite like a sacrifice. The young master said calmly outside the array at this time. As long as you surrender and return the stolen item, I can promise you that as long as you compensate for my subordinates with your life, I won't torture you. Thank you very much. Nero shrugged, then she suddenly became expressionless. But about giving buffs, I can do it too. Lines of black characters began to move from the hilt of Yamato to Nero's arm, then spread to her whole body and then covered her face. Her body seemed to be tattooed with strange patterns, and her pale hair instantly turned gray. She said indifferently, I'm very afraid of pain. I'll deal with you all in 1 minute. As soon as she finished speaking, under the gaze of the four wolf warriors, Nero's figure actually disappeared abruptly. At the same time, Lang Sha only felt something flashed in front of him, and then he saw his own body. That was its own body, a body that had lost its head. Its head had actually been separated from its body in an instant. The first one. Nero's body flashed again and then disappeared. When she appeared again, she had already appeared behind the second wolf warrior. Yama is a demon sword that seriously overdraws vitality. This Ms. Nero should not live for more than 3 years, her body is already full of holes. It was Miss Maid's voice. On the park bench, Boss Luo slowly opened his eyes, but his vision didn't stop. Instead, he asked, 3 years can do a lot of things. That's true. Yu Yi smiled slightly. Master, your afternoon tea. Yu Yi was probably the only one who would purposely bring the afternoon tea here. Then, today's afternoon tea ice cream? Luochio was slightly taken aback. He felt that this was the first time he ate ice cream during afternoon tea. The exquisite utensils contained something as cold as white snow. It's just made. Master, please taste it. Yu Yi said softly, the ice cream outside has too much pigment. How can I let Master eat it? Chapter 655. Ding. The sound of metal clashing. When Yama waved at the second wolf warrior, it had no time to care about the fact that it had died tragically. The result of years of training, the instinct of survival, and the strength as a senior monster made it wave its sharp claws and block the attack of Yama behind it. It thought that it could escape this disaster, and it secretly rejoiced in its heart. Unexpectedly, at this time, it felt a great fear in its heart, as if something was whispering in its heart. Devil like hell. It was a language that it couldn't understand. It only knew that when this whisper sounded, its whole body became abnormally stiff, and there was a kind of fear spreading. In just an instant it followed in the footsteps of Wolf Kill. It had blocked the first attack with its absolute strength, but it couldn't block the second attack that didn't stop. The second wolf warrior died on the spot, and its blood splashed on the spot. Seeing this scene, their young master suddenly shouted in a deep voice. He clapped his hands in front of him, and his clothes slightly fluttered. The power of Greedy Wolf was rapidly condensing. Greedy Wolf, the only priest of the Greedy Wolf clan, existed to serve the real Greedy Wolf star. Seeing the warriors of the clan die so tragically, a sense of grief and indignation emerged in the heart of this young master. Big Dipper defying 7 stars. Greedy wolf descends. Nero, who was flashing toward the third wolf warrior, instantly retreated a few meters at this moment. Although she was no longer suppressed by the strange power around her, it didn't mean that the strange power had disappeared. She just crazily improved her physical ability in a short period of time. It was not that the power of Greedy Wolf disappeared, but her ability to resist the pressure greatly improved in an instant. But at this time, the strange suppression power had clearly disappeared. Yama's whisper also sounded in Nero's ears, and this time, it was a warning voice. That young master? Then, let's kill him first. Nero directly gave up on the third Wolf Clan warrior that was within reach, and turned to directly attack the young master of the Wolf Clan. But at this moment, the other party's hands were naturally hanging down, and his eyes were downcast, as if he had lost his soul. It was as if he had already fallen asleep, but Yamato's whispers were becoming more and more intense. The Wolf Clan's young master's appearance, right now, was very dangerous. When Yamato was about to pierce the forehead of the Wolf Tribe young lord, the Wolf Tribe young lord finally reacted. It wasn't dodging or blocking, but rather grabbing. The young lord of Wolf Tribe stealthily grabbed Yamato's sharp blade when it was about to pierce into his forehead. Holding it firmly, Nero even had a feeling that the knife was inserted into a cube of pure iron. She abruptly twisted Yamato's hilt, and the rotating blade scraped against the young master's palm before she pulled it away. At this time, Nero saw clearly that the cheeks under the young master's eyes had a purple mark like a tear stain. Moreover, the young master gave off a very bad feeling. It was the same feeling she had when she faced Cook's fatal blow. Although it wasn't as terrifying as when she was in the club, it was still rare for her to feel this way ever since she inherited Yamato. Oh, it seems that there is also a way to improve my strength? Although his tone was relaxed, Nero's whole body was as tense as a tightened clockwork, ready to explode at any moment. This is the real power of the Greedy Wolf Star. Although it's just borrowing, it's enough to deal with you. The young master's voice sounded slowly. This was similar to the Divine Strike Taoist magic arts in the secret cultivation sects in the upper part of Kelowna, also known as Divine General. Big Dipper defying 7 stars, Greedy Wolf descends. Nero knew that it was not good, but the tension between life and death made her extremely excited. Facing death was also the moment when she was more compatible with Yamato. Only by constantly accumulating at this moment could she reach the third state of compatibility between her and Yamato, the state of Demon of Yama, that was always recorded in the literature of the Michael Club. That would be an invincible transcendent warrior. She was obviously fanatical to reach this state. In order to get back the secret treasure and avenge the death of her subordinates, the young master was also doing her best. Nero had lived in a place like the 8th Academy since she was a child. As long as she could win, there was a smile on her face. She retreated instead of advancing. It was not to escape, but to shift her target from the young master to the 2 wolf warriors. At this time, it was a little difficult to deal with the young master of the Wolf Clan, but it was much easier to deal with the 2 wolf warriors behind. At the moment of her companion's death, this seemingly young master would at least not be indifferent. This kind of battle where you die and I die is always so cruel. Don't you dare! The young master yelled angrily. With the emergence of the majestic power of the Greedy Wolf Star, the young master's speed even surpassed Nero's. She blocked in front of Nero first. At the same time, a mysterious collapsed space appeared and disappeared, swallowing Nero directly in an instant. At the same time, the young master also stepped directly into this strange collapsed space. The dark sky, the dark earth, the roaring and howling, as well as the endless sound of demonic wolves, seemed to be in a huge demonic domain. This was what Nero felt when she was sucked into this collapsed space. The young master of the Wolf Clan was above her at this moment, and a dazzling purple light erupted from her body. The oppression Nero endured at this time had reached the limit. She suddenly changed Yamato to her left hand, then she clenched the hilt of the sword with her right hand and made a posture of drawing the sword in the air. Don't pretend to be dead. This is not that, boss. I don't believe you will be afraid. Don't you want to eat me in the end? If I die here, you won't be able to eat me. Nero looked down at the demonic sword and sneered. Wisps of pitch-black power began to move around Nero's body. At this time, the young master of the Wolf Clan turned into a purple meteor and fell directly toward Nero. Finally, Nero pulled out the Yama blade and swung it forward. Yama Shura. The two powerful forces intertwined with each other in this strange space, causing a strong turbulence in this space. Rumble. At this moment, outside the collapsed space, two Wolf Clan warriors collapsed on the ground at the same time. The Big Dipper defying 7 stars was not an ability that could be used casually. The young master needed to make the general spirit of greed, and as a sacrifice, the young master needed to make some contributions. Under normal circumstances, she was extracting their power from all sides. The 4 Wolf Clan warriors who had been following the young master existed for this purpose. But the consumption that was originally shared by the 4 Wolf Clan warriors was directly superimposed on the remaining 2 at this time. The result was, of course, they had to kneel. Now, the 2 Wolf Clan warriors could not fight back at all. Any little monster that came would be able to kill them. Young master should be okay, right? A big man said weakly. Its voice was a little worried because it really didn't expect that the human woman was so terrifying that she directly killed 2 warriors including Lang Sha in an instant. Don't talk nonsense, the young master of the Greedy Wolf Clan won't lose. The other one snorted. The Greedy Wolf Clan might even have the power to fight against Shinryu. Although it was said like this, it was obvious that these words contained a sense of self-comfort. They might have the power to fight against Kelowna's Shinryu, but it was just a fight. This was a kind of heartening saying passed down from mouth to mouth in the Greedy Wolf Clan. If they really wanted to fight against Kelowna's Shinryu, it had never happened. At this moment, the strange collapsed space suddenly changed dramatically. The 2 werewolf warriors were shocked at the same time. They only felt a terrifying pressure leaking out from the collapsed space. It was changing shape, as if it couldn't bear the explosion of power inside and was about to burst, just like a balloon that was about to burst. Finally, an explosive energy turbulence was released from this collapsed space. The 2 Wolf Clan warriors were hit directly by this overwhelming energy turbulence at the same time, and they fainted in an instant. 2 different figures were thrown out of the collapsed space at the same time, and each of them fell in different directions. The surroundings had become a mess because of the raging energy flow. Fortunately, it was just on the riverbank, so it made it seem like a strong storm had blown here. It was just that a large number of fish in the riverbed had been blown out, scattered randomly on the riverbank, flapping their tails and struggling to die. Soon after, a voice jumped from the sky all of a sudden. At the moment of landing, the figure's body was squatting on the ground. It was not used to cushion the impact of landing, but purely a personal habit. Because the one who landed here was Sun Shaoxing, the owner of the Elysium Bar. Sun Shaoxing put his palm on his eyebrows at this time and looked around. Ha! Who was fighting here just now? Why didn't you call me? Hey, no one is here? Sun Shaoxing suddenly looked disappointed. He was originally having fun with the monsters in the bar. Suddenly, he felt a powerful monster power. His combative instinct was suddenly stimulated, and he came directly without saying a word. Sun Shaoxing frowned. After walking on the riverbank for a while, he found 2 headless corpses. This is the Wolf Clan, right? The dead monsters revealed their original appearance at this moment. That was the monster's body, 2 abnormally huge wolf bodies. And these 2 are still alive. Hey, wake up! Sun Shaoxing grabbed one of them without any pressure and waved his hand to slap him a few times. Wake up! As for the other one did the same thing, slapping it in the face. However, he just couldn't wake it up. It seemed that it was seriously injured. In fact, it was completely dying. Sun Xiaoxing scratched his head and stood up with a distressed face. This is difficult. Except for fighting. I don't know how to heal. So, the little theater in Brother Xiaoxing's mind immediately lit up. At this time, he could use this as an excuse to send these two guys to old grandma. Although old grandma Long was not here for the time being, it was Longer who was here now. Zijuan's niece. Because of the medicine theft incident last time, Brother Xiaoxing wanted to get close to her, but he couldn't put down his face. Now was the most suitable opportunity. If this little girl knew that he was so kind to save the dying and heal the wounded, she would say a few good words in front of Zijuan. Wouldn't it be great? Thank me. So, Brother Xiaoxing picked up the two wolf warriors who were still alive and put them on his waist. Then, he looked around and saw that there was no one around. Suddenly, he raised his head and kicked the two wolf warriors' corpses and heads directly into the river. After doing all this, Brother Xiaoxing left happily as if nothing had happened. Cough cough, Nero was in pain all over her body. The llama in her hand could barely keep her standing. After her body was thrown out of the weird space, she originally fell toward the river, but she was not by the river at this time. And there was no wet place on her body. Instead, it was quite clean. Because she had made a deal with the boss, the protection time was deducted after she could move at will, so at the moment when she fell into the water, Nero used the effect of this transfer. This time, of course, she was not thrown into the sea by the boss. There were green mountains and clear waters here. She was now in a bamboo forest. And in the middle of this bamboo forest, there was a small wooden house built. The wooden house in this bamboo forest seemed to have been abandoned for a long time, and it was surrounded by weeds. Nero walked to the door of the wooden house, pushed it open forcefully, and then her body fell directly into it. Her whole body curled up on the ground, and her body suffered a huge pain when the power of Yama faded away. Extreme pain. But looking at this empty wooden house, there was no trace of pain on Nero's face. Instead, there was a happy smile on her face. I'm going home. Dad, Mom. She closed her eyes and fell into a deep sleep, alone. Wind-chasing Wolf was very unhappy as he kicked the football and walked on the path. The reason was that he had made an appointment to play football with his friends, but it was obvious that he had been let off the plane. But at this time, a figure suddenly fell out of the alley in front of Zhuifeng. Who is this? Chapter 656. There was a traffic jam on the road, so Zhu Maolin had to open the window to get some fresh air. The short film shot with the newcomer, Xiaolu, had also been completed. Zhu Maolin took 2 different films to the client's company this afternoon. His subordinate, Tboy, accompanied him. Tboy was swiping his mobile phone at this moment. Suddenly, he frowned. Wow, what the hell is going on in this world? What's wrong? Zhu Maolin asked casually. Tboy put the phone screen in front of Zhu Maolin at this time. Look, this is the situation of the innermost riverbank in Riverside Park that someone just took. The riverbank is full of stranded dead fish. After this video was released, the management staff had not arrived yet, but those who picked up the fish arrived first. Here, this is the scene. Zhu Maolin just glanced at it casually, then he lost interest. Instead, he paid more attention to when the motorcade in front could be cleared. Manager, are you worried about the appointed time? Tboy said at this moment. Anyway, aren't you and the person in charge of this client's company old classmates in university? You can make a call and inform them. We don't want to be stuck in traffic like this. He didn't bother others as much as he did in the past. But in this case, there was really no other way. Zhu Maolin nodded. I'll make a phone call to inform them. Tboy, I'm afraid this car won't move for a while. You can get out and buy some drinks back. Okay. After Tboy got out of the car, Zhu Maolin called his old classmate. He was the kind of person who had high requirements for himself. If it was not necessary, he was unwilling to delay, wait, and so on. Sorry, this is the situation. Xiao Fei, please wait over there for a while. No problem. We have been classmates for so many years. You don't have to be polite. Don't worry. If you can't do it, change it to tomorrow. Zhu Maolin thought for a while. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon. If there is still a traffic jam, I will find another way to come over. Another way? Are you going to ride a motorcycle over? You haven't ridden a motorcycle on the road for many years, right? It has been some time. Zhu Maolin smiled subconsciously. There was indeed a traffic jam on the road, but at this time it was officially the world of motorcycles. At this time, a man wearing a helmet was riding a motorcycle and passing by him. He climbed to the front in a carefree manner. There was a girl on the motorcycle, hugging him tightly. She should be smiling, right? Zhu Maolin didn't see it clearly. He just had this feeling. In life, how much time is wasted in traffic jams? Zhu Maolin muttered, looking at the direction where the motorcycle disappeared. He seemed to be a little distracted. What surprised Long Shiro was that it was lunchtime, but someone actually knocked on the door of her pet hospital. Logically speaking, at this time, it should be Mo Xiaofei who temporarily replaced the little butterfly monster as a free laborer. But Mo Xiaofei had already said that he would only take the time to practice after school in the afternoon. Longer had to climb to the basement and look at the surveillance video here. The guy who is knocking on the door sneakily is Sun Shaoxing? What is this guy doing here again? Longer frowned, but looking at the screen, in addition to Sun Shaoxing, there were two other unconscious and shirtless brawny men. She couldn't help but feel even more strange. After a while, Longer finally opened the back door of the hospital. Only Chichikamaya knew the truth about her current appearance after Shinryu's power was taken away. So, if she had to, she would never reveal this to Sun Shaoxing, this big trouble. So Longer braced herself and said with a childish voice and inner shame, "Oh, you're not the one who came to steal last time." F***ck. What do you mean by I came to steal last time? Brother Shaoxing immediately put on a stern face, but when he thought that he came here with a sweet intention, he immediately searched his body for a while before taking out a lollipop. He then revealed a thunderous smile. "Little girl, do you want to eat a lollipop? My lollipop is very big. You can't find it anywhere else." Chichikamaya casually said before that as long as a little girl was given a lollipop, it was the most effective way to break the silence between older males and younger females. Bang dash. The door closed. Hey, if you don't like this one, I have a second one. Brother Shaoxing was taken aback, then he knocked on the door again. "Little sister, my lollipop is really delicious. Say something." "Damn pervert. Get out of here." F***ck. How am I a pervert? Brother Shaoxing was stunned and scratched his head. "If you don't want to eat, I will eat it myself." So Brother Shaoxing, who was shouting for the lollipop, continued to knock on the door and said, "Well, I saw two injured wolf demons outside. They don't look like they are from here. Do you want to see? If you don't want to see, I will leave them outside." Wolf Clan? Longer opened the door again and frowned as she appeared in front of Brother Shaoxing. At the same time, she looked at the two wolf warriors who were sitting behind Brother Shaoxing and leaning against the wall. These two warriors tore their clothes during the battle. At this time, their bodies were exposed. A strange purple tattoo could be seen on the left chest. Longer couldn't help but frown. This is the greedy wolf clan on the plateau? Why are they here? They shouldn't. Shouldn't they be attending the Punglai conference on Mount Tai's Nantian Gate? Why are they here? Greedy wolf clan? Brother Shaoxing asked curiously, "What is that? Why don't I know about it?" Longer rolled her eyes at Sun Shaoxing and said casually, "You monkey, you just got the inheritance of the ancient demon beast by chance. If you weren't a wild monkey on the mountain, how much do you know about the demon beast world? And you haven't been down the mountain for a long time. After you went down the mountain, you only know how to cause trouble everywhere. You haven't been to the plateau at all. There are a lot of things you don't know." Because it's cold there. It's a barren land. Why would I go there? Sun Shaoxing shook his head. And since I met your aunt, Zijuan, I don't want to leave here. By the way, where is my Zijuan? Don't talk nonsense. Move these two guys in. Longer reached out and pointed. Sun Shaoxing pointed to himself. Me? Longer glared and said, Is it me? Hurry up. Oh, okay. Sun Shaoxing nodded instinctively. He turned around and carried the two wolf warriors again. At this moment, he found that there seemed to be something wrong. Why are they so obedient? Also, why is the tone of this little guy so similar to old Lady Long? Moreover, didn't she look a little similar to that old woman? Wait, what did this little guy call Zijuan? And who was this old lady to Yi Zijuan? She was also his aunt? How is this relationship calculated? The Xianyuan royal family seems to have no descendants, right? So that is to say, could it be? This little girl is old Lady Long's illegitimate child or something like that? F***ck. Brother Shaoxing suddenly felt that he seemed to have discovered something incredible. It was a big news in the demon realm. Hey, what are you doing? Bring them in. Longer shouted impatiently. Okay. I'll be right there. Under the command of Longer, Sun Shaoxing quickly helped the two wolf warriors into a special treatment room. But when he planned to walk in himself, he was glared at by Longer. He had to stop awkwardly. I'll wait outside. Sure enough, she has the true inheritance of old Lady Long. This little stare is exactly the same. Brother Shaoxing rubbed his chin outside the treatment room and thought secretly. At this moment, a pure and majestic power of Shinryu slowly spread out, and the control was extremely precise. It did not exceed the scope of this hospital. Feeling the power of Shinryu that was exactly the same as Long Shirua, Brother Shaoxing suddenly snapped his fingers. Huh? I guessed right. The old lady really has a lover. And she has offspring. She even has offspring of her offspring. TSK. Brother Shaoxing exclaimed in a low voice outside the door of the treatment room, and then he was really shocked by this lover. He didn't know who he was. He could actually kill Kelowna's Shinryu. With the Dragon Granny's strong personality, she was still willing to give birth to a child for this lover. And after so many years, there was no news of this in the demon realm. Could it be that this lover was even fiercer than the Dragon Granny? Thinking about it, if not, how could the old lady succumb? Brother Shaoxing nodded and muttered to himself, This is a real powerhouse, a veritable dragon knight. He's my idol. When can I let Zijuan give birth to a child for me? It was just that this Shinryu's power dissipated quickly, about a few minutes. However, the door of the treatment room had not yet opened, so Sun Shaoxing sat directly on the floor and waited in boredom. In the treatment room, Longer frowned and looked at the two wolf warriors. They were saved, but it would take some time to wake up. It couldn't be helped. A few minutes of Shinryu's time limit was too much. It's just, they actually lost so much life. Did they use Greedy Wolf's Descent? Chapter 657. There was a very noisy sound all around. It sounded like the wind was blowing out. When it opened its eyes, it found that it saw a crimson cloud, and in front of it, it saw a little boy standing on the fence with his hands open, as if he wanted to fly away with the wind. It didn't know why, but such a figure subconsciously attracted it. It stood up and walked towards this figure. However, it had forgotten the fact that it was heavily injured. It only took 2 steps before it fell to the ground. You're awake. Zhuifeng heard the movement, so it turned around and jumped down from the fence. It walked to the front of it and helped it up. Are you okay? Who are you? Where is this place? My name is Zhuifeng. Zhuifeng rubbed its nose and looked around. Here? This is where I live, my home. But here. It looked around. Huge pipes crisscrossed, and there was a huge water tank. It was just casually built with cardboard boxes and wood at the place where the pipes intersected. It couldn't even be called a nest. In fact, it was just the rooftop of the building. Yes. Juefeng nodded. Actually, this place is very good. By the way, what's your name? How did you get hurt? Greedy wolf. No matter how it called, it didn't respond. It was probably the aftereffect of using Greedy Wolf's descent. Plus, it was attacked by the white-haired woman, so it suffered a lot of damage. Was it sleeping now? Even its body, it shook its head. It's my business, you'd better not ask too much. Thank you for saving me. I'm leaving now. If there's a chance, I'll repay you. As it said, it held the wall next to it and planned to leave. But its body staggered as if it would fall down at any time. In fact, after a few steps, it couldn't bear it anymore and was about to fall to the ground again. Juefeng was shocked and quickly jumped over. He stretched out his hand and scooped it up. Hey, what's wrong with you? Don't force yourself. Let go of me, it said softly. I said, don't force yourself if you can't. Look at you, you can't even walk. Juefeng frowned. Don't be so stubborn. Let me tell you, I used to be very stubborn, so I suffered a lot. Sometimes you have to accept the good intentions of others. Let go of me. She insisted with a hint of anger in her voice. Your hand, let go. Hand? Juefeng was stunned. Only then did he realize that the place his palm touched was a little uncomfortable. Juefeng quickly released his hand and said, I didn't do it on purpose. Even if you did it on purpose, now I. Before she could finish her sentence, she fainted on the ground again. Juefeng looked at her awkwardly. At first, when he saw her fall in front of him, his first thought was to send her to the hospital. Later, he felt a very weak monster power in her body. Naturally, he couldn't send her to an ordinary hospital. He should send her to Long Shirua's place. However, Juefeng had been a vagrant for a long time, so he was careful before he took action. In this city, when monsters went to the pet hospital for treatment, they were usually really sick. Usually, if they were injured because of fighting, they would be scolded by the Shinryu of Kelowna. Long Shirua had ordered many times that monsters were not allowed to fight in this city. However, some monsters were born to be aggressive, so they couldn't abide by this rule very well. Once there was a bloody incident, as long as they were still alive, they would rather hide and recuperate slowly than face the Dragon King. Juefeng didn't plan to send her to the Dragon King before he figured out why she was so seriously injured. Juefeng looked at her pale face and suddenly became absent-minded. Probably because she was weak, she couldn't maintain her human appearance very well. A furry silver tail grew out from the back of her buttocks, and her ears became sharp. Seems like she's also a wolf? Wind-chasing wolf approached her and looked at her. Her delicate face made him breathless, especially when he looked at the pair of light pink lips. He really wanted to take her for himself. In an instant, this terrifying thought appeared out of nowhere in Windchaser's mind. When he came back to his senses, his face was almost stuck to the other person's. Juefeng was so scared that his back was drenched in cold sweat, and he jumped away. No. How can I, Master Juefeng, do such a thing? Juefeng shook his head vigorously. He wanted to calm himself down, so he simply jumped directly into the water tank used to store water on the roof. And so cold. However, her body was really soft, very soft. Number 18 seemed to be keen to contact Zhu Maolin in Little Lu's appearance. For example, today, Number 18 planned a good show to meet Zhu Maolin. As long as Zhu Maolin came out of the client's company, they would have a chance encounter. It was just that Zhu Maolin encountered a traffic jam on the road. It took a long time for the road to clear up. Therefore, when Zhu Maolin came to the client's company, it was almost evening. No one knew when Zhu Maolin was still discussing with the client's company, so Number 18 had to modify her actions again. Of course, such behavior seemed to be a little superfluous in Daz's opinion. He didn't quite understand what was going on in this senior Black Soul envoy's mind. But what happened on the other side of the river just now? Did Jean Lu just warn me? Taisetsu looked at number 18, who was staring at the client's company floor where Zhu Maolin was located, and asked. Number 18 said indifferently, I'm not interested in what happened. I just know that the master and Miss Yu Yi were nearby at that time. So even if something happens, it's not up to us to ask more. We just need to do our part. Seducing someone to have an affair is also part of the job. Taisetsu was powerless to complain in his heart. I still don't understand. Isn't the club supposed to let the guests buy things? Even if Zhu Maolin's affair is successful, at most, it will destroy the relationship between the couple, right? Then, what does Zhu Maolin, as the patron, want to buy? Regret? But if he regrets, what will he want? You finally came out. Number 18 sneered at this time. After lifting the black robe on her body, she once again changed into Little Lu's appearance, and came to the back corner of the building. She looked at Taisetsu and said indifferently, It's your turn. Remember to act more realistically for me. Don't make any mistakes. Are you clear? Yes, yes. Taisetsu sighed. Your family is very poor. Your father borrowed a lot of money from loan sharks, and I'm a gangster who is here to collect your debt. With that said, Taisetsu's body naturally showed an unusual bandit aura. Number 18 glanced at him and nodded, and you really look like a good actor. Collecting debts was often done before washing one's hands on a golden plate. So Taisetsu felt that this was also considered as acting in his own character. However, isn't this kind of play very old-fashioned? Taisetsu sighed again, waiting for Zhu Maolin to come out of the building. It seemed that after Nero teleported away when he fell into the river, Mississippi Maid's smile was much brighter. Boss Luo's perspective also returned at this moment, and he returned to the club with Mississippi Maid. Out of curiosity, Boss Luo also looked at the situation of the young master of the Greedy Wolf clan. I didn't expect that the young master of the Greedy Wolf clan would meet Zhuefeng in the end. Mississippi Maid, who accompanied him, smiled slightly. Greedy Wolf and Greedy Wolf Star are separated by thousands of mountains and rivers, but they met here. Is it a fateful encounter? What would happen after the collision was a matter of the future. Boss Luo just smiled and didn't speak because at this time, the club welcomed a guest. The bell in front of the door suddenly rang, and a woman looked around blankly. She was still carrying a bag in her hand. Why did I suddenly? The boss had already got up to greet her and greeted softly, Welcome to the shop. Is there anything I can help you with, Miss Ho Chin Yuhan? That's right, the guest who walked in was the wife of Zhu Maolin, the investor who was being followed by number 18. Ho Chin Yuhan. Chapter 658. Even if they were old classmates and friends for many years, from a business standpoint, the negotiation representative of the client company did not blindly like the second short film recommended by Zhu Maolin. Although the second film was indeed more sensational, Xiao Fei had to consider the additional effects brought by the popularity of the heroine in the first film, and so on. But in the end, after a round of negotiations, Xiao Fei still bought the second short film. Because the cost of the second film wasn't high, it could even be described as cheap, and the quality was quite high. Therefore, it could be broadcasted on other levels of the TV station as a complement. This way, the advertising effect might be better. Generally speaking, it was a pleasant meeting. Maolin, thank you for your hard work. After the meeting, Xiao Fei came to Zhu Maolin. They were in a relationship where they could talk about everything. Xiao Fei handed Zhu Maolin a cigarette. Zhu Maolin shook his head and said that he quit. Xiao Fei smoked by himself. The fog was a little thick, so he opened the window. The city outside was already lit up. He looked at Zhu Maolin and suddenly said, Speaking of which, how long has it been since the two of us got together? Zhu Maolin thought for a while and said, More than half a year? The last time seemed to be in April or May. Xiao Fei was a little stunned. He smacked his lips a few times. Has it been so long? Why do I feel like it's only been 2 or 3 months? Zhu Maolin nodded. It has been so long. The last time I saw you, your belly didn't seem so big. Xiao Fei touched his belly and laughed. People say that middle-aged people get fat. I will only be 30 next year. It seems that it is ahead of schedule. Thinking about 7 or 8 years ago, when I was still in college, I was still in good health. Thin. Zhu Maolin only said one word. Xiao Fei suggested, "Why don't we have a weekend party after I finish this advertising project? Call your wife. I haven't rested for a long time. My wife and children at home don't welcome me home." "No need." Zhu Maolin shook his head. "I still have a project on hand. I'm afraid I can't spare the time." "Work is necessary, but you can't become a slave to work, right? I say, Maolin, shouldn't you stop once in a while?" Xiao Fei frowned and suddenly said, "I say, Maolin, are you and your wife still thinking about that matter? It's been a long time, right?" Zhu Maolin just patted Xiao Fei's shoulder gently. "That's it. I have to go back to the company to clean up. Let's talk next time." "All right, as you wish." Xiao Fei nodded and didn't insist too much. After Zhu Maolin left, Xiao Fei planned to finish the cigarette. He continued to look at the city outside, thinking about the scene when he had just graduated from school 6 or 7 years ago. He had also forgotten to eat and sleep like this. Many people also forgot to eat and sleep. Under the neon lights, people hurried to and fro. Often, they neglected many things. He was unable to clearly measure the proportion of what he had gained and what he had lost in this process. However, he was still satisfied with his current life. Although he was a little tired, there was always some excitement waiting for him to relax. All in all, for Xiao Fei, tomorrow was still something to be hoped for and cherished. Tomorrow was still something to be hoped for and cherished. This was the slogan of the public service advertisement. It was on the advertising board at the bus station. Ho Qinyuhan, who was sitting here waiting for the bus, had been looking at it for a long time. She was suddenly a little curious about the person who came up with such an advertising slogan. Was he really so strong in his heart, and was he optimistic enough to face all the hardships? Or perhaps this was just an empty sentence that was occasionally pieced together after a large number of words were accumulated. Perhaps there were really optimistic and positive people who could overcome all difficulties. After all, the population base of this world was so huge. The buses came and left one by one in front of her. Some were the buses she should take, and some were the ones she didn't need. However, she missed the ones she needed, and then looked at the ones she didn't need. She was unwilling to let her body move. The pedestrians on the road seemed to be fast-forwarded in the camera. They were in all shapes and sizes, from left to right, and from right to left. Just how long had it been like this? She didn't even want to think about this question. She was even more willing to stop thinking. If she could stop her brain cells from working, would there be such a situation of uncontrollable thoughts? Ho Qinyuhan covered her face with both hands and cried in this bustling street. The passers-by were still hurrying to and fro. Everything seemed to be a silent pantomime to her. She didn't know who was singing whose monologue. "Are you okay?" There were still kind-hearted people. Ho Qinyuhan heard the voice in her ear. She raised her head at once. It was an aunt in her 50s, showing a concerned look. Ho Qinyuhan shook her head, stood up, lowered her head, and didn't say a word. She quickly left in front of the kind aunt, and then walked aimlessly on the street. The above was what she experienced before coming to this place. It should be these things. However, Ho Qinyuhan had no impression of how she came to this place. She just felt that the decorative style here had an indescribable taste. It was like in the gap between the new and the old time, which made her feel peaceful. Under the flickering candlelight, a young man was looking at her with a smile. At the same time, there was another woman who was as beautiful as a dream standing beside him. Everything could be bought. This was a place where people could get what they wanted. This mysterious boss explained the meaning of this place to her. She naturally believed it. It seemed that in her overall cognition, there was no denial of the illogical power of this place. You want a child? Luocio looked at Ho Chin-yuhan. This was the request she made according to her thoughts at the moment. The negotiations in the club had always been like this. The guests would always say what they wanted at this moment. As for whether it was right, whether it was worth it or not, it was up to the guests to decide, even if they would regret it in the future. Boss Luo thought for a while and said, "If you just want a child, why don't you plan to adopt one? If it's just for emotional sustenance, there should be examples of deeper sustenance even if there is no blood relationship. In this case, I feel that the guests may not need to get it from us." If the guests wanted to do business, Ho Chin-yuhan thought that the boss was very strange. It was like he was persuading the guests to think about it again. She couldn't even tell whether the young man was being kind or hypocritical. "No. If it's not my child, it won't work." Ho Chin-yuhan shook her head. Her eyes were firmer and more paranoid than a few minutes ago. "Then I understand." Luocio nodded. "We really have no reason to refuse a persistent guest. However, I ask again. We can give you a child that belongs to you and your husband, but the cost." The boss stretched out his hand in front of Ho Chin-yuhan, and flower cards appeared in front of her. These were the things she could use to pay. "As long as you don't choose, you can still withdraw this request," Luocio finally said, "but in the same way, once you decide, you can't change it. So we hope that you can consider it carefully. After all, we don't want you to hate us when we collect this part of the fee." After looking at the flower cards one by one, Ho Chin-yuhan looked at Luocio with a complicated expression. She seemed to have become hesitant. The price marked here was forming an indecisive balance in her heart. She would hesitate at the last moment of making a decision. In other words, when there was still room for hesitation, it was normal to hesitate. The boss had good patience, waiting calmly for Ho Chin-yuhan's decision. He didn't urge her, nor did he give her any advice. He was so calm that he seemed to be integrated with the candle flames burning peacefully around him. "Can I think about it again?" Ho Chin-yuhan didn't have the courage to choose any of the flower cards in the end. "Of course." Boss Luo smiled and said, "We are not forcing you. Moreover, the guests don't have to worry about missing this opportunity. Because, strictly speaking, we are always on your side. The main thing is, if you remember this point, then you can at any time." It was like the whisper of an angel, but also like the whisper of a devil. When Ho Chin-yuhan came back to her senses, there were still passers-by who were rushing home after work. Everyone was in a hurry because there was always a place to go. Ho Chin-yuhan found that she suddenly couldn't remember what the mysterious boss looked like. Ho Chin-yuhan subconsciously took out her mobile phone and hesitated for a moment. "Ho Chin-yuhan, do you have to work overtime tonight?" "Husband, I just finished a meeting at Xiao Fei's company, and I have to rush back to the company. If everything goes well, I should be able to come back earlier." "What's the matter?" "I just met," but she quickly deleted these words and changed them to type. "Then let's talk about it when you come back." "Husband, if it's too late, don't wait for me." Ho Chin-yuhan didn't respond to this sentence. When the elevator came to the lobby of the building, Zhu Maolin waited for a while, but he didn't get a text message from his wife. He shook his head and remembered what Xiao Fei had said to him. So he typed the words. Xiao Fei said, "Do you want to have a family gathering?" But he quickly deleted these words. In the end, he didn't send any text messages. "Let's go back to the company," he said to himself. Zhu Maolin drove the car and stopped at the place where he was about to return to the company. He planned to buy something to eat as dinner, and then continue to work overtime. For him, food was just to appease his hunger. Help! A wretched figure suddenly bumped into Zhu Maolin. At the same time, there was a man with murderous eyes. Just the moment he looked at this man, Zhu Maolin felt like he was being stared at by a lion. "Help me, please." It should be a woman hiding behind him at this time. Zhu Maolin frowned. He wasn't a particularly righteous person, and he wouldn't be willing to involve himself in some unnecessary trouble just because the other party was a woman. especially under the premise that he didn't know who was right and who was wrong. Zhu Maolin subconsciously looked at the woman hiding behind him in panic, and then he was startled. It's you. This is the rookie model, Little Lu. Ah. Manager Zhu. Little Lu looked overjoyed at this time, as if she had met a lifesaver. Manager Zhu, help me. This guy is a bad guy. You are the worst one, okay? Taisetsu didn't know where to start complaining, but at least she was acting as herself, so she didn't have to laugh. Hey, brother, you'd better not meddle in other people's business. So Taisetsu's calm voice was neither salty nor light, but it sounded like a knife. This woman owes us a lot of money, and she hasn't paid it back. You know what to do, right? Zhu Maolin frowned. Recently, he heard that many students, especially female students, would do some ridiculous things, such as nude loans. The modeling circle was very messy, and the girls in the circle were both good and bad. Although he had the opportunity to work with Xiaolu once, he didn't have much contact with her after all. He didn't dare to conclude that she was hiding something under her pure and moving appearance. Since it is a monetary dispute, it is inconvenient for me to intervene. Zhu Maolin shook his head. Moreover, I am not familiar with you. Did you hear that? I am not interested in a bitch like you. Taisetsu snorted coldly. He walked forward and quickly reached out to grab Little Lu's arm. He pulled her up forcefully, looked at Zhu Maolin, and said, Brother, if you have nothing to do, just leave. We don't want to cause trouble. Let go of me. What are you doing? Let go. Who allowed you to touch me? Let go of me. Little Lu screamed in horror at this time. Her face turned pale all of a sudden, and her whole body trembled. Looking at Little Lu at this time, Taisetsu really felt that if he didn't know what was going on, he would really treat this girl as such. Sister 18, it's a waste that you don't win an Oscar with your acting skills. Let go of me. You don't have to act like this, right? Taisetsu frowned, but it seemed that Zhu Maolin had no intention of intervening at all. In other words, he wouldn't jump into this trick at all. Taisetsu had to sneer and said, Humph, if you want to blame someone, blame your gambling addict father who doesn't learn from his mistakes. The son has to pay his father's debt. Since your gambling addict father ran away, you must pay for it. Can you escape? Let go of me. Don't touch me. But Taisetsu didn't seem to hear it. He dragged her all the way. Let go of her. Zhu Maolin suddenly grabbed Taisetsu's arm at this time and said indifferently, Otherwise, I will call the police. You just said that you don't want to intervene. Do you want to cause trouble? Taisetsu sneered and stared at the other party. Brother, it's very simple for us to mess with you. Zhu Maolin said calmly. There are streets and alleys here. Even if it's not me, there will be people with a strong sense of justice who can't stand it. If she makes a fuss along the way, you will also be in trouble. Besides, if it's just a matter of money, why don't you use other methods? Taisetsu continued to sneer. Listening to you, are you going to help her pay back the money? Zhu Maolin shook his head. I don't have this plan. She can pay back the money by herself. She doesn't need others. Taisetsu was taken aback. He frowned and snorted coldly. If she can pay back the money, she won't run away when she sees us. This is simply reneging on the debt. Zhu Maolin said indifferently, Not now doesn't mean not in the future. You are just seeking money. You don't have to force people to this extent. She has the ability to make money. You are willing to give her time. I believe she also wants to pay back the money. It has nothing to do with you. But what's the benefit of forcing people to this extent? Brother, if you are too evil, you won't be able to survive. Taisetsu sneered twice. He suddenly pulled Zhu Maolin's collar forcefully and pulled him in front of him. Kid, you are quite courageous. You dare to talk to me like this? Zhu Maolin looked calmly facing Taisetsu's gaze. Taisetsu's gaze swept across Zhu Maolin's collar that he pulled open at this time. Under the neck, Taisetsu saw something. If he saw it correctly, this was a tattoo, a very big tattoo. It was not the kind of petty thing that young men and women would tattoo for each other. Generally speaking, this was something that only those who had been in the underworld would tattoo. It turns out that you are also in the underworld? Taisetsu said abruptly at this time. Zhu Maolin said indifferently, let go. I don't want to cause trouble. I said that she has the ability to pay back the money. As long as you give her time, she can find a job and always pay it off. Don't force people into a dead end. This is not good for anyone. Taisetsu patted Zhu Maolin's chest hard twice. Okay, I will give you face this time, but it won't count. You should let her pay back the money. Otherwise, I won't care which underworld you are in. Okay, she has left. Zhu Maolin sighed, looked at Xiaolu and said, you should go home too. He saw Xiaolu squatting on the ground at this time, shrinking her body. She still looked panicked. Zhu Maolin frowned and patted Xiaolu's shoulder. Are you okay? Are you hurt? Chapter 659. You will feel better after drinking some water. Later, Zhu Maolin brought little Lu back to the company. He took a cup of water from the tea and sent it to little Lu. The two were sitting in the office at this time. Thank you. Little Lu nodded and reached out with both hands to hold the paper cup. This was warm water, and it didn't feel hot at all. In such a winter, there was no cold feeling. Because it was near the advertising company downstairs, Zhu Maolin simply suggested that little Lu come back here to rest if she didn't mind. Along the way, there was nothing more to say. Little Lu seemed to be a little stunned. Her lips were a little pale, and there was a lingering fear in her heart. She looked at Zhu Maolin. That, manager, don't you want to ask about me? Zhu Maolin said calmly. I said that I won't intervene too much in your affairs. I helped you today mostly because you shot a good film for me. So, your personal affairs are your personal affairs. Little Lu lowered her head and took a sip of warm water silently. She looked at the shaking water in the paper cup and said faintly, I understand. It's the same for anyone who would want to get along with someone like me who was involved with those people. Everyone is more afraid of trouble. It's good that you know. Zhu Maolin nodded. Little Lu suddenly raised her head and said gratefully, But even so, I want to thank you today. Manager Zhu, if it weren't for you today, I really don't know what to do. She was so sad that she was about to cry. This should be a face that can particularly arouse a man's desire to protect. This kind of weak and helpless appearance doesn't seem to be fake. Zhu Maolin frowned. How should he put it? The shooting was completed a day ago. They were acquaintances, but he encountered such a thing the next day. Such a coincidence was a bit unbelievable for Zhu Maolin. The reason why he wanted to dissuade the man just now was that maybe there was such a coincidence. On the street, he doesn't dare to do anything to you. Zhu Maolin shook his head. I just said that even if it's not me, there will be someone willing to help. Late or early. If there's nothing else, you can go back by yourself when you have enough rest. Think about how to face those people in the future. But I can make a suggestion. Most of these debt collectors are not good. You can choose to ask the police for help. It's useless, those people. Little Jade shook her head vigorously. Have you tried it? Zhu Maolin asked. Little Jade remained silent. Zhu Maolin suddenly said, There is still something to eat in the refrigerator in the pantry. If you are hungry, heat it in the microwave. You can rest here for a while. Just be careful not to touch anything. I still have work to do. Without giving Xiaolu more room to talk, Zhu Maolin walked directly back to his office, leaving Xiaolu in the empty outer office. Because the customer's film was completed, the employees who finally didn't have to rush to work could leave early today. So when Zhu Maolin came back with Xiaolu, there was no one here. It was quiet. Only the faint sound of tapping on the keyboard could be heard from the manager's office. From the gap of the shutter curtain that was not closed tightly, little Lu could see that Zhu Maolin had obviously entered work mode, as if he had forgotten the passage of time. He really doesn't have any resentment. Little Jade frowned. Then, the ability of the past dream couldn't be activated. Perhaps, as Taisetsu said, her judgment of Zhu Maolin was too hasty. But if she modified the plan and thoroughly investigated all the information of the investor from now on, it was obviously not in line with her efficient work mode. In that case, she should use Xiaolu's identity to pierce the thick wall built by the other parties in different work. The warm water just now had become cold at this moment. It seemed that people's hearts were also becoming cold. Xiaolu opened the door of the office on this floor and walked out alone. At this time, Zhu Maolin heard the sound of the door closing outside. He looked up and found that there was no one in the outer office, so he continued to look at the screen without any expression. He didn't know how much time had passed. There was no one in the company, and it seemed that he would not stop unless there was a disturbance, until he once again heard movement from the office outside. Someone was knocking on the outer glass door. Zhu Maolin frowned. He walked out all the way and found that the person outside the glass door was little Lu, who had obviously left for some time. "Why are you back?" Zhu Maolin opened the door and asked in confusion, "Did you forget to take something?" Little Lu smiled slightly at this time. "Manager, you are still working overtime. Are you hungry? You just helped me. At least let me repay you. Let me treat you to something to eat." Zhu Maolin was startled, but he saw little Lu take out a bowl of instant noodles from the convenience store bag in her hand at this time. He opened his mouth slightly. It was the first time he saw someone treat someone to this kind of thing as a reward. Zhu Maolin sneered. Little Lu said with a look of annoyance, actually, I don't have much money on me. Moreover, I can't find anything delicious nearby because it's too late." Too late. Zhu Maolin subconsciously glanced at the time. It was almost 12 o'clock. In this area with office buildings, there was really nothing to eat. Again, it's this time again. But you can't underestimate it, little Lu hurriedly said at this time. Even if it's instant noodles, as long as you put in a little effort, you can make it very delicious. Let me borrow the pantry. Little Lu took the bag, lowered her head, walked past Zhu Maolin, and walked quickly into the pantry. Zhu Maolin frowned and followed. "Don't bother." He looked at little Lu. "I said, even if I don't help, someone else will stand up for you. You don't have to do this." Very soon, little Jade turned around, her eyes full of hope. "It's really very soon. This kind of uneasiness and guilt seemed to come from the heart?" No, this was something that only came from the heart. "Am I thinking too much?" Zhu Maolin was silent for a while, then nodded. "You will leave after eating, right?" Little Jade nodded her head seriously. "Then it's up to you." Zhu Maolin nodded. Little Lu began to fiddle with the instant noodles she bought with a smile. She took out the seasoning, poured hot water, and covered it tightly. Then, she put all the seasonings on the lid. Was it heating? Next, she took out the pickled mustard and sausages from the bag. She used the fruit knife found in the pantry to cut the pickled mustard into finer pieces. Then, she used the heated seasoning to stir the pickled mustard into a piece. Next, she continued to cut the sausages into thin slices. The plate was a glass plate used to hold fruit. After little Lu drained the water of the noodles that had been soaked, she mixed the sauce with the pickled mustard and seasoning into the noodles. Finally, she placed the ham slices on top. She held the finished noodles in front of Zhu Maolin with both hands, but she looked cautious. "It's ready to eat. Why is it so troublesome?" Zhu Maolin looked at little Lu's results and asked puzzledly. For him who pursued work efficiency and time, such behavior was really a waste of time. In fact, it tasted no different from mixing these things together. But little Lu clearly took out a bottle of orange juice and apple juice at this time, mixed them together, found some ice from the refrigerator, put it in, and sent it to Zhu Maolin. She smiled and said, "This is what I learned when I worked in a restaurant in the past. Mixing these two brands together, the taste is very good. Of course, it's not as delicious as the freshly squeezed ones, but it's okay." "You haven't answered my question yet." Little Lou lowered her gaze as if she couldn't face Zhu Maolin's gaze. She whispered, "How should I say it? Sometimes I feel that even if I eat alone, I can't treat myself too badly. Even if it's very simple instant noodles, if I put in some effort to make it for myself, I will be happier. This is also called enjoying life." Really? Zhu Maolin nodded. There were also such people. In life, many people would think this way, which seemed normal. Actually, Little Lou scratched her earlobe with some embarrassment at this moment. It's because I eat this kind of thing almost every day. If I don't change the method, I can't even eat it myself. Those words just now were too beautiful. I feel that I can't listen to it anymore. Is the taste okay? Zhu Maolin had already started eating. He didn't chew carefully, nor did he devour it. It was just a very efficient way of eating. He said calmly, "There is nothing different about the taste." "Ah." Little Lou smiled awkwardly. Zhu Maolin said coldly, "But the appearance can add a few points. It's okay." Really? It seemed that it could be easily satisfied. It was just such a simple statement of approval. Zhu Maolin was startled. He had never encountered such a simple little model in the advertising circle. In particular, this was an idea that suddenly emerged in his heart. "Why do you often eat this kind of thing?" Zhu Maolin suddenly asked. "It stands to reason that you can also take on a job, so you can eat. Didn't I settle the payment for you yesterday?" Little Lou shook her head and silently cleaned up the garbage after fiddling with this bowl of instant noodles. Zhu Maolin didn't continue to ask. "I'm done." He finally put down the plate. "Ah, okay," Little Lou said quickly. "After I wash these, I will leave immediately." Zhu Maolin nodded and returned to his office. Soon after, the lights in the pantry were turned off, and Little Lou left quietly. Zhu Maolin didn't care. He worked for more than an hour like this. The physical fatigue was already reminding him that it was time to rest. It was time to go home. He sighed and cleaned up everything here. Before leaving, he subconsciously walked into the pantry, turned on the light, and took a look. This place was unusually clean. Even the floor seemed to be wiped clean. Maybe I think too much. He shook his head and left the company. "Sheet is probably asleep now, right?" The headlights swept across the bus stop on the road. He found that there was still someone in front of the bus stop at this time. She ran around the bus stop in small steps, then jumped. Occasionally, she rubbed her hands and blew into her palms. "Why are you still here?" Zhu Maolin had to stop the car. He met the girl again. "I'm waiting for a bus." "There is no bus at this time." Zhu Maolin shook his head. "Then, is there any other bus stop nearby?" Little Lou asked quickly. "I'm not familiar with this place. I can't find the way." "There is only one nearby." Zhu Maolin shook his head. "Why don't you call a taxi?" "I see." Little Lou nodded. "I got it. Manager Zhu, you go back first." "I'm fine. You see, the convenience store across the street is still open." "And then you be careful." Zhu Maolin released the car's handbrake again and drove the car out. He looked at Little Lou in the rearview mirror and found that she just rubbed her hands at this time and sat down. She didn't immediately take out the phone. She just sat there. He reversed the car back. It was too late. It was okay to not follow the rules a little. "Manager Zhu, why are you back?" Little Lou opened her eyes curiously and asked. It was winter. Her face was already a little pale. Zhu Maolin frowned and suddenly asked, "Are you planning to wait here until early morning? Didn't I just ask you to call a taxi?" "I will call. I will call later. I can't stay here all night." Little Lou smiled and said, "I'm not stupid." "All right, then you can call again." Zhu Maolin nodded. Little Lou took out her phone, but she saw that Zhu Maolin didn't intend to leave. In the end, she had to say weakly, "I'm sorry. I really intend to wait here because it won't take long, just a few hours. Then it's too expensive to take a taxi." The car door suddenly opened. Zhu Maolin said in a rather helpless tone, "Get in the car." "Where do you live?" I will send you back. But, hurry up. Don't waste time. Little Lou hesitated for a while before saying, Then you wait for a while. As she said, she hurriedly ran to the convenience store in front. After a while, she ran back breathlessly. Then, she got into the car and sent a bottle of hot milk to Zhu Maolin. Manager, you drink this. It's not good to drink coffee and tea so late. But she didn't buy his share. Zhu Maolin guessed that she might be reluctant to buy his share. It was already cold when waiting for the taxi. Really, are you short of a lot of money? Zhu Maolin asked abruptly. Little Lou lowered her head and didn't answer. You just need to send me to the night bus stop in front. You don't have to send me home, oh. Zhu Maolin nodded. The car drove slowly. Soon after, Zhu Maolin said indifferently, The client also bought the film you shot. But it shouldn't be broadcast in prime time. If the effect is good, I will recommend you to sign an exclusive contract with this company. Really? It was so quiet that only the friction of the wheels and the asphalt road on the road outside could be heard. At this time, a voice broke the silence. There was really such a girl untainted by the mud. Zhu Maolin smiled slightly. On this road that he was used to late at night, it didn't seem to be as long as before. Chapter 660. The dark black SUV drove all the way to one of the urban villages in this city. This was the address Little Lou gave to Zhu Maolin. With a gambling-addicted father in the family, and the girl herself was particularly thrifty, it didn't seem unreasonable that she would live in such a simple place. At this time, Zhu Maolin remembered an interesting thing. That was, the bus stop clearly stated the time of the bus. In other words, whether there was a bus or not, as long as one took a look, one would know the approximate time. No one would really be stupid enough to wait in place. But when he found Little Lou, what was she doing? She was trotting and jumping around the bus stop. She seemed to be doing some warm-up exercises. She probably really intended to spend the long night like this. In fact, before Little Lou left the advertising company, she could have raised the difficult problem of not having a car. If not, she could also ask Zhu Maolin to borrow some money for a taxi. No one would mind the 100 or so yuan, but she chose the stupidest method. Such a girl came out of a fairy tale, right? The chaotic atmosphere in the advertising circle had long made Zhu Maolin's concept quietly change. Of course, this change might not be good, but it was obviously necessary for life. Therefore, when his mind had habitually used this method to think about a woman who approached him, Little Lou's appearance seemed to bring some impact that was different from the past. Zhu Maolin also thought of another point of view. When men were young, they would look forward to and desire women who were more mature than them. But when we have matured, we prefer those who are ignorant of the world. Have you lived here since you were a child? The car slowly stopped downstairs of an old 4-story building. The street lights were dim yellow. There was a feeling of insufficient power, or the bulbs were old. A few unknown little bugs were flying under the light at this time. Little Lou shook her head and answered Zhu Maolin's question. She quickly got out of the car as if she didn't want to continue to add more trouble to Zhu Maolin. She apologized and felt guilty. Thank you this time. Zhu Maolin just shook his head and said calmly, Just think of it as me accumulating my own resources. It's hard to find a good advertising model. She is good and has some talent. There should be more room for development in the future. Just think of it as me investing in a debt of gratitude. Little Lou was taken aback. Zhu Maolin's rhetoric was a little beyond her expectation. Whether it was as Little Lou or something else, is this the so-called maturity after officially stepping into society for a long time? Little Lou looked at Zhu Maolin with a complicated expression. The so-called maturity? I believe you will mature in the future. Zhu Maolin smiled lightly, then poked his head out and looked at the old building above his head. Aren't you going up? Since we're here, I'm going to send you off. Little Jade hurriedly waved her hand and walked up the unguarded staircase. It was the kind of staircase where the lights were manually turned on and off. As for Zhu Maolin, he quietly drove away from this place. Tiantai Mountain returned to the dark old house. A pair of cold eyes hidden in a black robe finally watched Zhu Maolin leave this place completely. "He doesn't seem to have any intentions, does he?" Taisetsu's voice suddenly rang out. Number 18 suddenly turned around at this time, looked at Taisetsu, and said coldly, "How is your practice of the illusion ability? Why do you suddenly ask this?" Taisetsu asked subconsciously. Number 18 said indifferently, "Little Lu needs a very bastard father, and you just acted well. Big sister, you still plan to continue?" Taisetsu said incredulously. He suddenly felt that this was not like a novice teaching him at all. It seemed that number 18 was inexplicably competing with him. He didn't believe that a black soul envoy who had lived for many years would use such a cumbersome and inefficient method. "Isn't this too low? Do you have a problem? If that's the case, I will think of another way. Anyway, you have no obligation to listen to me," Number 18 said indifferently. Taisetsu shook his head. "I don't mean that. As I said, I'm not a good person. I won't blindly resist some so-called methods. I'm thinking, why don't we thoroughly investigate everything about this investor? The more we know, the better we'll be able to make a better judgment, right?" Taisetsu imagined that number 18 would definitely understand what he meant. As for why number 18 didn't take the initiative to mention this matter, it was probably because he spoke too beautifully at the beginning. At this time, he couldn't get off the stage, or he couldn't put down his face. Then, he would take the initiative to mention it. Number 18 looked at Taisetsu meaningfully and suddenly nodded. "Okay, the work of collecting information is originally one of my duties. This time, I will leave everything behind Zhu Maolin to you. Just treat it as practice. Of course, I won't let you work for nothing. If this transaction can be completed, I will offer to give you part of the performance." "So isn't this a way out?" Taisetsu smiled slightly and said indifferently, "Let's talk about this later. Then, I'll think about where to start the investigation." With that said, Taisetsu's body turned into mist. Number 18 was slightly startled. Obviously, he is just a newcomer who can't fly well. Now, he can turn into mist so skillfully. How much practice did he do behind my back? Her view of Taisetsu had quietly changed a little. She unexpectedly felt that Taisetsu was a black soul envoy who could get along with normally. But what's going on with this Zhu Maolin? Number 18 could clearly feel that this man was moved for a moment. However, it was just a moment and he became impregnable again. If he really loved his wife deeply, such a situation could be explained. However, he and his wife were in that strange mode of getting along. As Taisetsu said, it really needed to be investigated in depth. Number 18 was silent for a while. She subconsciously looked at the dark night like a void and murmured, "Could it be that Master has foreseen this situation, so he deliberately approved this investor? If this is the case, then, is Master already peeping into the future?" At 3:30 in the early morning, Zhu Maolin finally returned to the community where his home was located. After dragging his tired body for a day, he washed up silently and went to bed with his clothes. When he closed his eyes, he suddenly heard a rustling sound. "Did I wake you up?" Zhu Maolin knew it was Ho Qinyuhan. "I haven't slept," Ho Qinyuhan said softly. After a long silence, Zhu Maolin said, "Then, let's sleep." Unexpectedly, his wife didn't turn around. Instead, she let her body get closer. It was the warmth of her body that had been buried in the quilt for a long time. This warmth was completely different from the heat of just taking a shower. It was like using warm water at just the right temperature to gently cast a thin layer of gauze on the body. Zhu Maolin smelled the fragrance of his wife's shampoo. At the same time, his lips were kissed. Heavy breaths were exchanged between the two. He could instinctively respond to the other party's kiss without even thinking. There was no need to deliberately cooperate because he had already practiced it countless times. His wife's enthusiasm was somewhat beyond Zhu Maolin's imagination. It was like a magnesium strip that was ignited. The light and heat for a moment drove Ho Chin Yuhan's mature body. She sat on Zhu Maolin's body passionately, but she bowed her body as if she was unwilling to leave the lips of the person who shared the bed with her. She unbuttoned her husband's pajamas one by one. Like a drizzle, she began to gently suck her husband's neck. The nimble tip of her tongue then began to wander to her husband's chest. In a small place, she used the tip of her tongue to swirl around again and again. Finally, as his wife, her palm became restless after all. Ho Chin Yuhan's palm suddenly slipped into her husband's pajama pants. There was nothing indescribable, because they were a legal and reasonable couple. This was a matter of human relations. They had long passed the so-called reserved age. But Zhu Maolin knew that his wife rarely had such active behavior, which made him feel a little at a loss. His wife's palm at this moment was as soft and flexible as when pinching clay in the pottery art classroom. The tactile feeling brought by the condom had connected the nerves in his body. But this was far from it. He had already felt that his clone had entered a warm and soft place in the next moment. The nimble tongue was licking the skin that represented the masculine vitality. Zhu Maolin didn't know how many lifetimes of hard work he had used to exchange for such a gentle place. In the end, he sighed and said softly with a bitter voice, "Let's sleep." Ho Chin Yuhan suddenly quieted down. Her body seemed to have stiffened. Time also stopped at this moment. When time turned again, she rushed out of the quilt as his wife. She looked at Zhu Maolin with desperate eyes, then turned her head and walked into the bathroom. The sound of water splashing sounded. Zhu Maolin knew that these sounds existed to cover up another sound. But he couldn't find any position he could use to stop these covered sounds. Because of his incompetence. Yes, as a man who couldn't fulfill his obligations as a husband. But he didn't lose his function as a man. His function was still very normal at any time. However, he still couldn't have the slightest reaction when facing his wife. When Ho Chin Yuhan finally walked out of the bathroom of the master bedroom, Zhu Maolin was no longer in this room. He was lying on the sofa in the living room outside. Who didn't sleep? Do you want to sleep? Ho Chin Yuhan didn't even want to let herself think about this question. She even wanted to forget the source of all this pain. Ho Chin Yuhan closed her eyes, and the contents of the flower cards that she had opened naturally appeared in front of her eyes. These contents flashed in her memory again, and gradually became clear, including her love. She didn't know how this magical shop set the price. She just wondered if her love that was about to be broken really had such value. Ho Chin Yuhan didn't remember how long she and her husband's time was out of sync. It turned out that when the time difference was synchronized, as always, there was only pain. Across the door, a scream suddenly came from the room in the quiet living room. Zhu Maolin finally just covered his eyes with his arms. In the early morning, 4:02 a.m. Early in the morning, the cemetery's morning hall welcomed a very young man with a scarf wrapped around half of his face. It was not a fixed festival of worship. Many people would choose to come to this cemetery at this time to worship. An old man who was in charge of cleaning here looked at the young man with a scarf curiously. He stopped in front of a memorial tablet and looked at one of them. "Excuse me, do you want to buy some sesame oil candles?" However, since someone had come, the old man wasn't surprised and decided to do business with this young man who didn't bring anything with him. "All right, give me some." Taisetsu nodded. The old man found that this young man seemed to be particularly pious. In the end, Taisetsu put a bunch of incense in front of a child's memorial tablet. Zhu Maoxing. This was the name of the deceased child. "Hey, little brother, who are you to this child? Why haven't I seen you before?" The old man looked at Taisetsu curiously at this time. The old man had always been managing here. Most people who came here remembered him, whether they were new to the cemetery or those who came a long time ago. But after thinking about it, this young man was indeed the first time he saw him. "I'm a friend of this child's parents," Taisetsu then said, and then suddenly asked, "Old man, have you seen this child's parents? His mother often comes here quietly alone, so I have a deep impression of her. That's why I have a very deep impression of him." The old man thought for a while and said, "But I don't have any impression of his father. I remember that he came here once when he first bought the location." "Why?" Taisetsu suddenly asked. The old man subconsciously said, "Probably because he feels guilty? After all, such a thing happened. I don't think anyone feels good. Speaking of it, I can only blame this child for being unlucky." "What do you mean?" Taisetsu asked. "This child seems to be locked in the car by his father and suffocated to death." Chapter 661. If it was such an accident, then it must have been reported on the news. No matter if it was on TV or in the newspaper. The memorial tablet in the cemetery had a clear time of death, which was a good time for Taisetsu to check. Oxygen inhaling sheep internet cafe. Taisetsu was sitting in a single seat in this internet cafe, searching for the information he wanted. "Sir, the green tea you ordered." The waiter was a little girl. After delivering a bottle of green tea, she quietly looked at the man with a scarf. She felt that he was completely different from the young people who came here to play games. "Is there anything else?" Taisetsu found that the waiter hadn't left yet, so he couldn't help but ask curiously. "No, no." The waiter girl could only shake her head and leave. "I can't resist this kind of young but very mature boy with a magnetic voice." Taisetsu looked at the little girl strangely. Even after she left, she still quietly hid in the distance and occasionally peeked at him. "Could it be that my identity as a black soul messenger has been discovered? But that shouldn't be the case. At least from what 18 said, those who can see the uniqueness of a black soul messenger are definitely humans with extraordinary powers. And the waiter of this internet cafe, no matter how you look at it, she is just an ordinary girl. Maybe it's an illusion?" Taisetsu shook his head and began to browse the information he was looking for. Retrieved from a father car accident, child suffocated to death. The time was 3 years ago. Taisetsu opened the web pages one by one and began to use all the information recorded on the web pages here, trying to restore the accident 3 years ago as much as possible in his mind. On Friday night 3 years ago, a man surnamed Zhu and his 3-year-old son were on their way home after eating dinner at his parents' house. On the way. Jihua Road. Shaoxing? I haven't fallen asleep yet. I just fell asleep after eating, so I'm going home so late. There's no traffic jam. How can there be a car so late at night? It's very empty. Shaoxing? He's playing at the back. Shaoxing, don't grab my hair. Okay, let's not talk about it. I'll be home soon. The child's proud prank voice. But as a father, he would not be angry at such a small prank. No matter if it was him or her, as a husband, as long as this child could always maintain a smile on his face, no matter how many pranks he pulled. As long as the child had hope for life, as long as the child didn't realize the difficulties of this society and life. As long as the child didn't realize that he was different from others. "Dad, when can I learn to walk?" "Yes, as long as you practice every day, little Xing, it will be very fast. But if you slack off that day, it will take a very long time." This child was born unable to walk. He was a handicapped child. But even so, he and his wife never gave up. This was because the couple firmly believed that no matter what kind of life it was, whether it was perfect or flawed, when this little life was born in this world, it was already a great miracle. Their children's flaws would only make them, as parents, give them more love and care. "It's going to take a long time." The child lowered his head. "When you can walk, Dad will take you to fly a kite and go fishing by the sea, okay?" Little Xing quickly raised his head and said coquettishly, "I want to eat pudding." "You forgot that you can't eat supper? It's not good for your health." "I want to eat." Little Xing bit his finger and said, "Dad, can you buy it for me?" "Okay, but don't tell your mother when you go back." He turned back and parked the car in a parking space on the side of the road, next to a convenience store. Come on, Pinky, promise. The father took the child's little finger and closed the door. The child who couldn't walk could only stay in the car. It didn't take much time to buy a pudding. He soon walked out of the convenience store. When he was still waiting for the red light, he saw his car across the road. In fact, he bought 2 puddings. He would eat them with his son later. It was also a very precious memory for the father and son to eat together without telling their mother. It belonged to the childhood memory between the father and son. In the future, they could reminisce about it together, right? After turning the green light, he took a step forward. Something was stinging his eyes. It was extremely bright light. A red sports car was roaring like a galloping beast at this moment. Boom! Little Xing, manager? In the morning, at the advertising company's routine morning meeting, Tboy called Zhu Maolin in surprise. In front of the projection in the conference room, the colleague who was making a report also looked nervously at the department manager who had been working very hard all the time. Everyone found that manager Zhu was holding his chin with his hand at this time. He was silent, and his face was frighteningly gloomy. Everyone was a little uneasy. They didn't know if the manager was dissatisfied with the report. Although Zhu Maolin wouldn't scold people directly, the manager's questioning could make people feel uncomfortable and doubt their life. What? Zhu Maolin was startled at this time. He looked at Tboy in confusion. What did you just say? Sorry, I remembered something, so I didn't pay attention. Manager Zhu Maolin was absent-minded in the meeting and apologized to everyone. This was a rare occurrence. For those who had only been employed for more than a year, it could even be said to be a miracle. Oh, it's nothing. It's just little Zhang's report. Tboy was an old man who had followed Zhu Maolin. When he could say something, he could only bite the bullet and say something. And okay, I will read this report again later. If there is a problem, I will know how to find it. Zhu Maolin nodded, then stood up. I'm sorry, I didn't rest well last night. Let's end today's morning meeting here. Amy, help me make up a leave request form later. I'll take a leave today. After speaking, Zhu Maolin picked up the things in his hand and directly left the conference room. In the conference room, everyone looked at each other as if they were looking at a monster. They began to whisper, "This manager is completely abnormal today. Could it be that this is the precursor of a storm? It shouldn't be, right? I think maybe he really didn't have a good rest. Didn't you notice that the manager's eyes are bloodshot today? Does he not sleep a lot every day? This workaholic must have no sex life. Stop talking. The manager hasn't gone out yet. Let's get back to work." Later, after the father was sent to the hospital, he quickly woke up. His life was not in danger. However, the child was accidentally suffocated to death in the car. The driver who caused the accident has been arrested, but it can't make up for this tragedy. Cherish your life and stay away from drunk driving. Don't create a family tragedy because of the excitement you are pursuing for a while. So many tragedies happen around you and me every day. Isn't it enough to sound the alarm for you and me? Contributor Ren Xiling. Ren Xiling? After Taisetsu read this report, he was stunned. Where did I hear this name? But he was just curious, and he quickly thought about Zhu Maolin's matter. This is the crux of the problem between the husband and wife. Taisetsu nodded and raised his hand. Excuse me, the bill? The car stopped in front of the entrance of the cemetery. Zhu Maolin hesitated for a moment, but he finally stepped into the gate of the cemetery entrance and came to the mourning hall. Unexpectedly, he saw a familiar figure here, standing in front of the memorial tablet that he didn't want to face. Maybe it has been a long time. She is here too. Sure enough, it's because of what happened last night. And I'm here too, because I remember again. When she turned around, she saw Zhu Maolin standing behind her. At the moment when their eyes met, Hao Chen Yuhan's body trembled slightly, and then their gazes quickly separated. Zhu Maolin just nodded, walked past his wife, and put an incense stick in front of the memorial tablet. Hao Chen Yuhan suddenly whispered, "Little Xing should be very happy that you are here." This was the second time he came here. He really came here, even if he knew it was this place. Zhu Maolin, who was lighting the incense with a lighter, was stunned all of a sudden. It wasn't until the flame burned his fingers that he reacted. He subconsciously glanced at the photo on the memorial tablet. The black and white photo in front of the memorial tablet was the child's most perfect and happy smile. Chapter 662. Zhu Maolin later told Hou Qinyuan to take a walk outside. He took a leave of absence to come here today. He brought 2 bottles of water over and handed one to Hou Qinyuan. He was as polite as when he was at home. He was even more polite than when he first met her. It was just that there was no rush of excitement. Hou Qinyuan seemed to know why her husband, who never came, would appear in this place today. Hou Qinyuan remained silent along the way. No matter what topic was used as a starting point, it would eventually turn into a cold situation. It was better not to say anything. They could still have some tacit understanding after getting along for a long time. Yes, there might still be such a tacit understanding. How about, you say it first? You say it first. Then, then, he looked away and continued to walk on this road. It seemed that no one had the courage to say the how about in the future. It was just that Zhu Maolin still felt a deeper level of guilt. He stopped, and Hou Qinyuan subconsciously took a few steps forward. This time, it was his time that stopped, and her time was flowing. He looked at her back, and finally chose to stop his time more completely, and then let her time flow more completely. Let's get a divorce. Hou Qinyuan's body trembled slightly. She didn't stop or look back as if she didn't hear it. She just walked forward. In the end, there was no response, and she disappeared from this cemetery. Zhu Maolin stared blankly at the place where she disappeared. He said silently in his heart, "You are still young after all. How can I deprive her of her rights as a woman, even if it is love?" Soon after, Zhu Maolin also left the cemetery. He didn't go back to the company, and he was even more reluctant to go back to his home. He drove alone, circling the road aimlessly. Even when he finally said this sentence, he didn't feel relieved at all. It was a cloudy day with no wind. The cloudy and windless weather seemed a little dull, especially in winter. It gave people a very bad feeling. Probably, something was pressing her heart. She just stared blankly at the grayish-black sky. Greedy Wolf still didn't respond. When it woke up today, the first thing it did was to call out, but there was still no response. Sure enough, it was because she was too heavily injured. Of course, it was also because of the death of the 2 wolf warriors. She was unwilling to absorb too much vitality from the other 2 wolf warriors who were sacrificed, resulting in her being unable to unleash the power of the Greedy Wolf, resulting in such a situation. The monster who claimed to be Xuefeng was hiding at the side, quietly looking at her. When she woke up, the first thing she saw was the little monster who had picked her up. After putting down a set of clothes, as if he was frightened, he immediately hid and peeked. This guy should be less than 50 years old. Her hands were too heavy. She could only vaguely tell that this child's demonic power was not strong. But for some reason there was a strange sense of closeness. Why would such an ordinary little coyote monster give her such a weird feeling? "Come here, don't hide." She shook her head and shouted at the spot where Xuefeng was hiding. After a while, Xuefeng walked out stiffly. This kind of stiff movement was like a large amount of glue stuck to his body. She smiled subconsciously. Because of the injury, she could not completely maintain her human form. She smiled with dimples. "My name is Zixing." After all, he was her savior. There was no reason for her not to say her name out loud to Xuefeng. Miss Zixing. Hi, hello. I am Xuefeng." Xuefeng straightened his chest and clasped his hands together like a soldier standing guard, but his eyes drifted to the distant sky. He did not dare to face Zixing in front of him. "Haven't you introduced yourself before?" Zixing smiled. This Xuefeng's appearance reminded her of the children who had always admired her on the plateau. They were also so reserved, afraid that they would miss her sight if they did not perform well. Is that so?" Xuefeng scratched his head awkwardly. If it was just a female monster, he obviously had a lot of contact with her. Not to mention others, Nini, who often played with him, was a cat demon. Although Nini was obviously very clingy to cheese, Xuefeng did not seem to be so reserved when he played with Nini. His heart could not help but beat faster, and he could not help but look at the other party's pale cherry lips and purple pupils. Have you lived in this city for a long time?" Zixing looked at Xuefeng and felt that this child was still too nervous. "Where are your parents? Why do you live in such a place alone?" "My parents are gone." Xuefeng's nervous state suddenly disappeared, and he looked a little lonely. After the loneliness, he quickly cheered up and wiped his nose. "But I have a group of very good friends. They are all my family, and they are worthy of my life to protect." "That's great." Zixing looked at Xuefeng yearningly. "What about you? What about your family?" Xuefeng simply sat cross-legged on the ground and looked up at Zixing sitting on the simple wooden bed in front of him. "Me?" Zixing said softly. "I don't have parents, but I have an elder brother." Elder brother, Xuefeng didn't know what this feeling of having a brother or sister was, but it should be the same feeling as cheese. He felt that maybe it was not much worse than a real brother. Zixing covered her chest at this time and coughed a few times. Xuefeng quickly stood up. Do you know Lord Long? I don't think your injury will recover in a short time. Why don't I send you to Lord Long? He will definitely be able to cure you. However, Lord Long doesn't seem to be here recently. But don't worry, now there is little Long. She is Lord Turtle's disciple. Her medical skills should be very good." Zixing didn't know who Little Longer was, but she looked at Xuefeng and frowned. Are you familiar with that lord? That kind of big shot who ruled over the monster race? And this most ordinary little coyote? Not really. Xuefeng scratched his head and said, "In fact, Lord Long is very good to us, especially those like us who haven't fully matured yet. It's all the same. And usually, everyone likes to go to Lord Long's hospital. Even if it's not to see a doctor, we will chat for a while. In fact, Lord Long is very good, but he has a sharp tongue. And, occasionally, he has some bad interests, right? Is that so?" Zixing nodded. She had never seen this Lord Dragon God of the monster race. Living on the plateau, in such a bitter and cold place, there were very few monsters who were willing to come to Kelowna. She had never seen him, but she had heard his name. For Zixing, this Lord Dragon God was always very colorful, but she didn't expect to hear Xuefeng say this. Perhaps he was an approachable lord. "How is it?" Xuefeng asked. "I didn't know about you before, so I didn't dare to take you there. I was afraid that something would happen, but now there should be no problem." Zixing looked at Xuefeng and said coldly, "Then, aren't you afraid that I am a very bad monster?" Xuefeng was taken aback, then said seriously, "I know why. I always feel that you won't hurt me, and can't hurt me. So, there shouldn't be a problem. It's natural that I won't hurt you. After all, you saved my life but can't hurt me?" Zixing was a little amused. Sure enough, it was because the injury was too serious that this little monster felt that she was also a little monster. "Thank you for your kindness." Zixing shook her head. "If it's just this kind of injury, I can recover by myself. Don't bother that lord." "Is that so?" Xuefeng was slightly disappointed, then said, "Then, is there anything I can help you with?" Zixing thought for a while and suddenly said, "In that case, can you help me find some medicinal materials? Ordinary Chinese medicine shops should be able to find them, as long as they are not fake." "No problem." Xuefeng patted his chest and stood up. "I'll go now." With that said, he jumped onto the railing of the rooftop at once. Seeing that he was about to leave this place, Zixing quickly shouted at this time, "Wait, I haven't told you what medicinal materials I need." Xuefeng was taken aback. Then, he stepped off the rooftop and fell down to the ground. Zixing subconsciously got up worriedly, but she saw Xuefeng holding the railing with one hand, then crawling back with a scared look on his face. He kept saying that it was a close call. Zixing covered her mouth and laughed softly, thinking that this little monster was really funny. So beautiful, Xuefeng was mesmerized. It was a cloudy day, and there was no wind, but it was not bad. Chapter 663. Chuanxiong, Safflower, Rosemary. Xuefeng lowered his head and read the names of the medicinal materials that Zixing wrote for him in front of the old master of the Chinese medicine shop. Of course, it was impossible for him to know what the effects of these medicinal materials were, but Zixing should be very familiar with medicine since she could write these medicinal materials by herself. Soon after, he left the Chinese medicine shop and rushed to another place, a river bank in the riverside park. This was what Zixing asked him to do. She asked him to go there and see the situation. Maybe he would meet a few of her friends, using this as a token of recognition. Xuefeng looked at the doublefish jade pendant that Zixing gave him in his hand, and suddenly he was a little distracted. This is what Zixing has been keeping on her. Although it has been in my hand for a while, it still seems to have Zixing's body temperature. It seems to carry her scent. The car in front of the road sped by and suddenly honked its horn, waking Xuefeng up from this state of absent-mindedness. He shook his head vigorously, then hurried towards the riverside park. In the long-abandoned wooden house in the bamboo forest, Nero, who had fallen directly on the ground since she opened the door, opened her eyes abruptly, and then sat up directly. She moved her neck, and the sound of bones cracking could be heard. Nero habitually took out a piece of gum and put it in her mouth. After chewing it, she looked at the time on her mobile phone. She was in a coma for a whole day and night. Fortunately, there is a boss who can send me back here, otherwise. Nero got up and continued to move her muscles and bones. If she was not in this place, but directly in a coma outside, for a person like her, it could be said that she had no sense of security at all. Even if it was a club with a higher actual safety factor, it would be fine. Even if that place was safe, it could not give people any sense of security. Nero put Yamato on a small wooden table in the wooden house at this time, then pushed open the door of the living room and walked into the quiet room inside. Her parents lived in seclusion in this place, and she was also born in this place. At least now, she could still remember some bits and pieces of this place. Nero, who had to force herself to be optimistic, lowered her head and smiled. In general, she had a relatively complete childhood. In the quiet room, Nero sat directly on the ground and then took out a few things. One was the box he obtained from the club to preserve the quality of souls, and the other was used to chase after the mutated Prometheus iron whistle. On the way to trace Iron Whistle, Nero encountered the Greedy Wolf clan from the plateau. At this moment, beside this small compass was the so-called secret treasure from the Greedy Wolf clan. It was a dark bead, but it didn't seem to be made of jade. When he held it in his hand, there was no reaction. However, the Greedy Wolf clan valued it so much. It probably needed some special method of the Greedy Wolf clan to activate it. Speaking of which, since she had already obtained this thing, if she used it as the transaction fee, would the boss accept it? She seemed to be thinking of something strange again, and her eyes narrowed. Soon after, Nero found some ingredients from around the bamboo forest, and then cooked a very simple dinner here alone. At night, Nero closed the door and hummed a song. Finally, she whispered to the empty cabin, "I'm going out." If it was in the past, she might have added, "Dad, Mom, I'm going out." If it was in the past, she traveled day and night, but in the end, she still left this place. Xuefeng quickly strolled around the riverbank of the riverside park, and then quickly rushed back to his house on the rooftop of the building. In these 2 days, He didn't even contact Cheese, Nini, and the others because he didn't want to reveal the matter of Purple Star. He didn't mean to hide it deliberately, but he felt that the fewer people who knew about Purple Star, the better. This was the vigilance he had developed when he was wandering. Using the simple tools here, he boiled these medicinal materials into medicine. After drinking it, although he couldn't get out of bed immediately, his complexion seemed to be better. Looking at Purple Star meditating, the aura around her began to converge on her body. Xuefeng couldn't help but feel a little envious. In this situation, Purple Star should have some special cultivation method. For the current monsters in the monster clan, because of the decline, many monsters were unable to use the high-efficiency cultivation methods of ancient times. Most of them were some shallow breathing method. Some could only rely on instinct to absorb the aura of the natural world. For example, Xuefeng himself used the shallow breathing method that he comprehended himself. As for Purple Star's extremely efficient technique, it was probably something that only the ancient monster clan with an inheritance could possess, right? Or it could have a very powerful elder or something like that. Although he had a very powerful power before, that power disappeared after the boss took away the demon wolf soul in his body. Now, he was still as ordinary as before. For a noble monster like Purple Star, she probably wouldn't have any special feelings when looking at the most ordinary little ground wolf like him, right? Is there anything on my face? Purple Star suddenly opened her eyes and found that Xuefeng had been staring at her at this time. She asked disrespectfully. No, no. Xuefeng waved his hand in a hurry. I just saw that you absorbed the aura very quickly. Very, very powerful. Purple Star smiled slightly, then her heart moved. She said softly, Xuefeng, let me see you absorb the aura once. Now? Xuefeng was taken aback. Can't I? Purple Star asked in a low voice. No, no, no. Xuefeng shook his head quickly, then sat up straight, but he said a little awkwardly, but my efficiency is very poor. I'm afraid you will see me as a joke. With that said, Xuefeng no longer pretended and closed his eyes. In fact, it was best to choose the time at night to absorb the aura. Now that it was daytime, the effect that was originally not satisfactory could only be described as unbearable. Purple Star watched silently, feeling the changes in the concentration of the aura that would be adhered to by Xuefeng. Finally, she said slowly, Xuefeng, listen, I will only say it once. How much you can remember is your own business. Just treat it as a thank you gift for saving me. This is a very good method of my clan. I hope it can be of some help to you. Some paragraphs that were difficult for Xuefeng to understand seemed to be engraved in his mind. Even if these were words that he could not understand, for some reason, when Purple Star was dictating this method, the aura that was originally slow seemed to become active all of a sudden. His body, as if it was not under his own control, had naturally undergone some sort of change, and this change was indeed not visible from the outside. With Purple Star's reading, Xuefeng gradually entered a state of forgetfulness. Looking at the changes in the flow of the aura, after reading the method, Purple Star's eyes lit up subconsciously. Of course, she could not reveal the important method of the Greedy Wolf clan casually, but after all, he had saved her life. So this was the best method that she could take out. In fact, it could be regarded as a simplified version of a certain great technique in the inheritance of the Greedy Wolf clan. If it was placed in the outside demon world, it would be something that many wild demons would fight for. I didn't expect that just an ordinary Aardwolf bloodline would have such a good perception. Purple Star's surprise gradually became stronger, but in the end she had to sigh. It's a pity that such a perception if it weren't for this little Aardwolf bloodline, but how could it change?